Chapter 794. But now, the strongest of the sacred mountain, Naren Ryu, had rushed over. No one knew what the final result would be. Naren Ryu, the son of Saint, was rumored to be an invincible existence among his peers on the sacred mountain. It went without saying what it meant to be a son of Saint on the sacred mountain. A saint was an existence that transcended all living beings. It was the pride of the heavens. The battle between the Bawang sects, Yi Su, and the sacred mountains Naren Ryu had attracted the attention of billions of people. In the Xinjiang Gate, Elder Suga, elder by Ming Shan, and the others looked up. In the Tianxian sect, Jian Wanyin and the others had complicated expressions. Within Command Heaven Palace's lineup, Vice Palace Master Guanlan's eyes were filled with shock. Clearly, he had suffered quite a bit of shock. Merciless West's eyes were cold. Seeing the blurry, overlapping images in the void, she already knew what was going on. It seemed that the thing she was most worried about had happened. The sacred mountain had indeed made arrangements in the sacred martial secret world to attack Su Yi. They had even used a killing weapon like the soul manipulation talisman. This was a sure-kill situation, but it seemed that Su Yi was lucky enough to have the same defensive method, the soul manipulation talisman shield. Senior Brother Nalen, come quickly. Senior Brother Nalen can definitely kill that kid. Great. Senior Brother Nalen is here. It was a complete mess, as if the earth had just been destroyed by a great earthquake. The remaining young disciples of the holy mountain retreated into the distance. Their faces were deathly pale, and their eyes were filled with horror. But when they saw Nalen Ryu, they once again saw hope. Sui also saw her. She seemed to be somewhere in the sacred martial secret world. Nalen Ryu had arrived, but Sui ignored them. With a sneer, he was still looking at the sacred mountains line up outside the sacred martial secret world. Suddenly, everyone was shocked to see Su Yi raise his hand and point at the holy mountain's formation with his index finger. There seemed to be a few space bags in his hand, stained with blood, which seemed to have been obtained from Chu Zhonghuan. Oh my God, this is a challenge to the sacred mountain. Many people couldn't help but cry out in alarm. For some reason, they felt their hearts beating faster. That young man had killed Chu Zhonghuan of the sacred mountain in front of everyone, and now he was actually pointing at the sacred mountain. Not to mention, since ancient times, no one present had ever heard of such a thing. At the very least, they had never seen anyone in the entire Central Plains who dared to challenge the sacred mountain. Staring at the young man in the void portal's projection, Elder Bing Cauldron, Wang Chuanda, Quang Guilan, and the rest of the Holy Mountains group gritted their teeth, their faces ashen, and the iciness in their eyes intensified. This is a provocation. If we don't crush their bones and scatter their ashes, where will the sacred mountain's face go? The eyes of some Holy Mountain experts turned red, the corners of their eyes twitching. Su Yi sneered, turned around, and looked at the young disciples of the sacred mountain who were waiting for hope in the distance. There were not many young disciples left of the sacred mountain, less than 2/3 of them. Half of them had already been killed. Su Yi's gaze, even from distance, was inexplicably chilling. Whoosh! Su Yi moved. The Yuan Qi under his feet swept out, and his figure suddenly shot out like an afterimage, aiming straight for the remaining young disciples of the sacred mountain. What does that Yi Su want to do? Under everyone's watchful eyes, some people could not help but feel their blood boil, their hearts tightening for no reason, and their hearts almost stopped beating. Not good. Those disciples of the sacred mountain, who were waiting for hope, saw the young figure coming towards them. Their eyes, which were already full of hope, instantly fell into horror again, their souls trembling for no reason. Run, run. As powerful as the disciples of the sacred mountain, they all looked down on everything, never putting any disciples of other sects in their eyes. But at this moment, each and every one of them looked like they had seen a fiend. They did not even have the heart to resist, only one thought deep in their hearts, and that was to run and wait for Senior Brother Nalen to come. Run, run, run. One by one, the sacred mountain disciples panicked. Their expressions changed greatly and scattered like birds and beasts. When they came to their senses, they immediately hurriedly fled. Mo Beiming couldn't even withstand a single blow, and even Chu Zhonghuan was no match for him, killed in front of their eyes. At this moment, these disciples of the sacred mountain, who usually looked down on everything, no longer had the courage to fight. Not to mention, they were already seriously injured, and even if they joined forces, they wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. Unfortunately, these disciples of the sacred mountain were far inferior to Chu Zhonghuan, and even compared to Mo Beiming, they were far inferior. Even in terms of speed, they were no match for Su Yi. Whoosh! Su Yi was too fast, appearing in front of a sacred mountain disciple. With a cold glint in his eyes, a black sword appeared in his hand, emitting a dazzling light. This sword was the sword that Mo Beiming used before. Lone Mountain had already collapsed, and Mo Beiming was buried in a pile of rubble. However, this extraordinary sword had appeared in Su Yi's hand at an unknown time. Whoosh! The sword light was like lightning. Su Yi's sword pierced forward. The sword light rapidly expanded in the disciple's eyes, and he couldn't resist at all. In the end, the sword pierced through his chest and came out from his back. His eyes closed powerlessly. Kill! In the next breath, Su Yi's figure had already appeared next to the second sacred mountain disciple, and his sword slashed forward without any fancy moves. The sword light was thunderous, and the sound was ear-splitting. Swish, swish, swish wherever the sword light passed. The disciple tried to escape in horror, but it was too late. He couldn't dodge in time, and in despair his body was directly cut in half, blood splashing everywhere. Su Yi began a massacre, his eyes surging with killing intent. The sacred mountain already wanted to kill him, so why should he restrain himself? Su Yi began a massacre at this moment. Killing one was killing 100 or 1,000 was also killing. He would kill as many as he could, until the sacred mountain felt heartache. Bang bang. Su Yi's figure was like a ghost, like a reaper reaping the harvest. Wherever he passed, sacred mountain disciples would be beheaded, blood splashing everywhere. This was a massacre. The sacred mountain disciples had always been high and mighty. The disciples of the sacred mountain represented absolute strength among their peers. They were unreachable existences among their peers. In the vast central continent, all young people dreamed of becoming a sacred mountain disciple. But at this moment, millions of eyes saw the sacred mountain disciples fleeing in all directions like birds and beasts, unable to withstand a single blow. They were completely slaughtered, so weak and helpless. So this is the sacred mountain. Some people in the crowd couldn't help but have doubts. Was this the so-called sacred mountain that deceived countless people in central continent? Of course, not many people would really doubt the sacred mountain. The sacred mountain disciples were definitely strong, and every one of them was a genius. All of this was because the Bawang sect's Isu was too strong, so strong that he was like a monster. No, Naylan, hurry up. My disciple. Chapter 795. Some of the elders saw their own disciples being killed with their own eyes. Their eyes were red with anger, and their hearts were pained. There was no doubt that their disciples were being slaughtered in the sacred martial secret world. They were all direct disciples of the sacred mountain, and any one of them would be the backbone of the sacred mountain in the future. Even the sacred mountain would be heartbroken by such a loss. Not to mention, this was the face of the sacred mountain. The direct disciples of the sacred mountain were slaughtered by someone of the same generation, unable to withstand a single blow. This was equivalent to giving the sacred mountain a slap in the face, one after another. Roar! The two scarlet-eyed green flood dragons roared with their heads held high. Their red eyes were like two bright suns, and their green scales opened and closed. They could feel the anger of the sacred mountain people. Little bastard, the sacred mountain will burn your bones and scatter your ashes. Elder Ice Cauldron was enraged. His roar was like thunder. His gaze darkened, and his figure instantly disappeared. At this moment, with the sound of wind and thunder, he seemed to have turned into a bolt of lightning as he charged towards the heavenly command palace. Shi Wuqing and Emperor Qing's eyes darkened at the same time. That silhouette rushed over in an instant. They could feel that it was coming for them. Ice Cauldron had his eyes on Merciless West and Green Emperor. He was crazily slaughtering the disciples of the sacred mountain inside. Ice Cauldron was furious. His target was Merciless West and Green Emperor, the two people beside that brat. An eye for an eye. Ice Cauldron was furious. In an instant, he arrived in the void above Merciless West and Green Emperor. However, at this moment, Ice Cauldron seemed to have sensed something. His figure that was charging towards them suddenly paused, and his eyes immediately looked forward. A figure stealthily appeared in front of the Green Emperor and Shi Wuqing. His face was old, and his body seemed to stagger. His short stature made his round body look like a ball. However, at this moment, there was a faintly discernible aura on his body that seemed to have solidified the void. Deep within his eyes, a ray of light flashed, bringing with it a chilling intent. Guanlan, this has nothing to do with your imperial palace. That little bastard killed the disciples of the sacred mountain. I must kill these two today. When he saw this old man, Ice Cauldron's face darkened. His furious eyes were filled with fear. Someone killed the disciples of the sacred mountain. The younger generation of the sacred mountain couldn't withstand a single blow. If you're not convinced and shameless, you can go in and take revenge. Vice Palace Master Guanlan's voice was faint as he mocked. Guanlan, I can't be bothered to argue with you. That kid killed so many people in the sacred martial secret world. When he comes out, the sacred mountain will naturally settle the score. However, these two must die today. Those who provoke the sacred mountain will pay the price in blood. Elder Ice Cauldron said angrily. His eyes twitched fiercely as he stared at Deputy Palace Master Guanlan, Green Emperor, and Merciless West. Oomph. Green Emperor snorted coldly in a low voice. A green light gradually surged into his eyes. Merciless West's face also darkened. Her robe fluttered slightly, and her aura faintly fluctuated. Ice Cauldron, the sacred martial secret world, isn't a place where your sacred mountain has the final say. The sacred martial assembly isn't a place where the sacred mountain has the final say. Do you think everyone is a fool? It's obvious that your sacred mountain people used the soul manipulation killing talisman in the sacred martial secret world. I'm afraid that your sacred mountain people took the initiative to deal with Isu first. Isu now has a relationship with my imperial palace. Your sacred mountain people used the soul manipulation killing talisman in the sacred martial secret world. After this matter is investigated, my imperial palace will naturally ask your sacred mountain for an explanation. Deputy Palace Master Guanlan's face darkened. The threat in his eyes was undisguised. Hearing this, Ice Cauldron felt a little guilty. His expression flickered, but under his rage, his heart was filled with anger. He shouted angrily, Guanlan, don't go too far. Do you really think that the sacred mountain is afraid of the imperial palace? Hearing Ice Cauldron's words, Deputy Palace Master Guanlan did not care, but the coldness in his eyes intensified. He said, whether the sacred mountain is afraid of the imperial palace or not, I don't know. But as far as you're concerned, Ice Cauldron, I really don't put you in my eyes. If you want to pick a fight, I'll accompany you anytime. Guanlan, you'll have to pay the price for your words. The imperial palace will really anger the sacred mountain this time, Ice Cauldron said gloomily. His voice was mixed with Yuan Qi. In the shadow of the sky, the disciples of the sacred mountain were being slaughtered. His face was ferocious, and he was extremely angry. In that case, let's see what the consequences of the imperial palace will be. You dare to behave so atrociously in the imperial palace. Do you think that the imperial palace is easy to bully? Deputy Palace Master Guanlan's voice was filled with sharpness. As his voice rang out, his fat ball-like body had already soared into the air, appearing directly in front of Ice Cauldron like a ghost. Monstrous Yuan Qi suddenly swept out from his body, immediately distorting the sky. The dazzling Yuan Qi light was like a dazzling sun. The aura rumbled, and the sound of wind and thunder roared. Chapter 796. Boom, boom, boom. The experts of Yuqian Palace also moved. A mighty aura suddenly spread across the sky, accompanied by an aura that made one's soul tremble. Merciless West and Green Emperor also rose into the sky, their auras sweeping out. Vice Palace Master Guanlan stood up for them, so he naturally wouldn't fall behind. The confrontation between Sacred Mountain and Yutian Palace stunned the billions of eyes in the mountains. The experts of the 5 sects and 3 factions were also alarmed. Do you want to fight? My Yutian Palace will accompany you. Light surrounded Vice Palace Master Guanlan, his aura soaring to the sky. He looked at Bing Cauldron, completely unconcerned. Bing Cauldron looked at Vice Palace Master Guanlan fiercely. The experts of Sacred Mountain weren't afraid of Guanlan, but Bing Cauldron knew that Gyue, Yin Lu, and Yin Ding were still in the Yuqian Palace. They could come to help at any time. There were quite a few experts from Sacred Mountain this time, but they were unable to resist the few people from Imperial Palace, especially Guyu, who was a ferocious fellow. No. Another expert of Sacred Mountain shouted, his heart filled with grief. In a short time, the few remaining disciples of Sacred Mountain in the sacred martial secret world had been killed again in the void. Boom! Su Yi's figure was like lightning. With a punch, a young man of Sacred Mountain was directly sent flying, smashing into a pile of rubble. Blood spurted out, and he was directly killed. Whoosh! The sword light was like lightning, and the last young man on the scene fled in panic. He wished he could grow 2 more legs, but he was too slow. Su Yi's sword pierced through his shoulder, and a stern face appeared in his eyes, causing his soul to tremble in fear. No, the young man was terrified, his face pale. The pride and arrogance of a disciple of Sacred Mountain was gone at this moment. Su Yi sneered, pointing his sword at the young man. He slowly raised his eyes and pointed in the direction of Sacred Mountain in the void. Seeing the confrontation between Yutian Palace and Sacred Mountain, his killing intent turned cold. He suddenly shook his sword light erupting. No, my disciple, outside the sacred martial secret world, in the Holy Mountains formation, an old man was grieving with horror. No, how could this be? At this moment, among the crowd below, there were also quite a few experts from some of the major forces who were at the front. These people were from the Mystic Yuan sect, the Big Dipper sect, the Sky Sun sect, and other sections. They had seen with their own eyes that the outstanding young disciples of their sects, the future of their sects, had been killed by Yi Su of the Bawang sect. Bastard! The experts from the Mystic Yuan sect, the Heavenly Sun sect, and the Heavenly Dipper sect roared furiously. Their faces twitched as they roared in grief. Their hearts were bleeding, and they felt as if they had been cut by a knife. Chilala! Su Yi began his massacre. Sword light erupted from the young man's body from the inside out, instantly turning him into a bloody mist. Not even his bones remained. As the sword light swept out, the bloody mist exploded like fireworks. All the disciples of the Holy Mountain, including the disciples of the Big Dipper sect, who had come to besiege the young man, were killed. Not a single one was left alive. Many space bags were taken into Su Yi's hands. Large patches of blood and broken bones were left everywhere on the ground. This was a massacre. It was a massacre. It made people's hearts tremble. Those who were killed were not ordinary people. They were the disciples of the Holy Mountain, the top disciples of the younger generation of the Holy Mountain. In just a short period of time, dozens of young geniuses of the younger generation had all perished at the hands of this ferocious young man. This part of the world was constantly trembling, and the rumbling sounds in the sacred martial secret world were unceasing. However, the killing intent in the surroundings was monstrous, and a murderous aura filled the air. It was as if everything was silent. There were several dozen outstanding disciples from the sacred mountain, as well as existences like Imo, Beiming, and a terrifying young man like Chu Zhonghuan. But now, they were all killed by this ferocious youth. It was a clean and decisive massacre without the slightest hesitation. Inside and outside the sacred martial secret world, 10,000 pairs of eyes widened as they stared at the young man. The young man looked ordinary, but at this moment, As he stood there quietly, he was like a killing god that had descended to the mortal world. What geniuses! What rare geniuses! In front of a killing god, they were all invincible. Goo goo! In the distance, even Su Chun and Yen Lin couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Especially Yen Lin. At this moment, he finally understood Su Chen's words. It wouldn't be easy for a disciple of the Holy Mountain to kill that guy. He's too strong. I'm afraid that the champion of this sacred martial assembly, the king of geniuses, will be between him and Naren Ruyu. Too terrifying, as expected of a legendary heaven-grade soul master. Isu is a soul controller. He didn't even use a soul controller's method to kill Chu Zhonghuan. His strength is unfathomable. Hundreds of millions of eyes trembled. Those with sharp eyes felt their hearts beat faster. Everyone knew that Isu of the Bawang sect was a soul controller. However, up until now, including when he killed Chu Zhonghuan, he hadn't used a soul controller's method. How unfathomable was this? On the various mountains, the experts of the major forces were all trembling at this moment. How could they not know what such a killing god young man represented? This was a monstrous genius that could sweep away all his peers. His bones should be ground to dust. He should die without a burial place. In the Holy Mountains lineup, an old man cried out sorrowfully. He kept roaring, his heart bleeding. An old man who looked like an elder of the Holy Mountain couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Only the people of the Holy Mountain knew that this elder had brought 3 of his most promising direct disciples this time. He didn't expect that none of the 3 disciples would be spared. They were all killed in front of his eyes. They couldn't even withstand a single blow from that unknown Bawang sect's Isu. It was as if he was killing birds and beasts. This was not only the pain of dripping blood, but also the humiliation. Bing Fu's face was ashen. Blue veins popped out on his face. He looked ferocious and gloomy. Bing Fu looked at the sacred martial secret world with murderous intent. He wanted to kill the Green Emperor and Merciless West. He knew that the 2 of them had always been by that kid's side. However, with the Imperial Palace there, he couldn't do anything. If he really fought, they would definitely be the ones at a disadvantage. In the Central State, only the Holy Mountain reigned supreme. If the Holy Mountain wanted to kill someone, no one dared to stop them. However, the Imperial Palace, an existence that didn't care about worldly affairs, had to be feared by the Holy Mountain. TO original initials 2, 7 Oz 0 I 3 D 7M 5 foot D 9 inch buzz. In the sacred martial secret world, the void trembled and roared. A thunderous sound was particularly ear-splitting. A figure broke through the air and flapped his wings, bringing about a storm. His body was shrouded in a dazzling halo as he arrived like lightning. Chapter 797. Saint Naren Ruyu is here. Someone cried out in alarm. Naren Ruyu had arrived. He was the saint child of the sacred mountain. He was a heaven's pride among heaven's prides. He was known as one of the strongest among his peers in the sacred mountain. He was an existence akin to a god descending to the mortal world. At this moment, under the gaze of hundreds of millions of eyes, Naren Ruyu spread his wings and floated in the air. When he landed, the wind and clouds surged around him. His aura was inexplicably oppressive. He had an innate disdain for all heroes. Su Chan raised his eyes to look at Naren Ruyu. His white robes fluttered slightly, and for no reason, his demeanor was peerless. There was a faint light in his clear eyes. Su raised his eyes and saw Naren Ruyu. His eyes were deep, and his killing intent did not diminish. Under his robes, there was a faint red glow on his skin. A faint aura fluctuated. The domineering and destructive aura of the Origin Supreme technique converged as he circulated the heavenly, Fey ancient scripture. There seemed to be a problem with the sacred martial secret world. He did not want to expose his true identity. Even if he did not fear it, he was afraid that it would bring disaster to Barbarian City. At this moment, all eyes were fixed on Su, and Naren Ruyu. Perhaps this sacred martial assembly's peak showdown was about to begin in advance. You killed my sacred mountain's disciple. You deserve to die. Naren Ryu only stared at Su-yi. The light in his eyes became even more dazzling. His aura surged, shaking the void. He had an imposing aura that could sweep through all directions. He was a heaven's pride among heaven's prides, the saint of the sacred mountain. Many people knew that Naren Ryu had come for the championship of this sacred martial assembly. He had come to suppress all the other heaven's prides. He was an existence that all the young people of the central continent could only dream of. Even in the entire sacred mountain, there were only a few other people who could compete with him for supremacy. Boom! In just an instant, Naren Ryu made her move. She directly stomped on Su-yi, wanting to crush Su-yi into pieces. This was a kind of lofty conceit and arrogance. This was revenge against Su-yi. Only in this way could they wash away the shame of the sacred mountain. However, such a stomp shook the void in all directions. Unobstructed, multicolored light gushed out from below, bringing with it an unparalleled divine aura as it crashed down towards Su-yi like a meteor. Bang, bang, bang. With Su-yi at the center of it all, the ground around him began to crack, and his aura spread out to destroy everything. Kill that brat and grind his bones to dust. In the sacred mountain, the experts were also gnashing their teeth. The best way to wash away this shame and heartache was to use Naren Ryu. This is a battle of the pinnacle. Billions of eyes trembled. Without any superfluous words, the battle of the pinnacle had already begun. Looking at the stomp, Su-yi's clear and deep eyes unknowingly surged with a vortex of light. However, the murderous intent in his eyes did not diminish. A terrifying aura filled with an ancient aura, as if it could suppress all directions, instantly soared into the sky. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, under the gazes of billions of eyes, the void above the sacred martial secret world suddenly trembled. A bright light swept down from the depths of the void, and the surrounding void seemed to be overlapping and isolated. Boom, boom, boom. The light flared, and the aura shook the heavens and the earth, vast and mighty. A woo! In the entire sacred martial secret world, the barbaric beasts roared and trembled. The muffled sound was like rolling thunder, and the space seemed to be overlapping. Under the astonished gazes of countless people, the terrifying aura of Naren Ryu's stomp was suddenly obliterated in the void. A ripple like a spatial crack appeared, isolating Naren Ryu and the Boang Sexy Su. The vast space in the entire sacred martial secret world seemed to be compressed in an instant, as if the ground had shrunk into an inch. Layers of spatial ripples collapsed in the depths of the void. In the sacred martial secret world, the wind and clouds surged, and the light was even more dazzling. The vast aura swept in all directions, causing the surrounding mountains to shake. What's going on? Such a movement caused the powerhouses of various forces to exclaim in surprise. The opposing forces of the Sacred Mountain and Yutian Palace also looked at the Sacred Martial Secret World. The Sacred Martial Secret World has collapsed, and it's going to disappear completely, Vice Palace Master Guanlan said, frowning slightly. The Sacred Martial Secret World was already completely collapsing, probably due to the impact of the Soul Manipulation Talisman and the Soul Manipulation Talisman Shield. Suddenly, from the void, rays of light appeared. They were all dozens of feet in size, and golden light filled the air. They were wrapped in multicolored light and filled with a sacred aura. A total of 32 rays of light appeared in the low sky, as if they were real, as if they were sacred arenas. What's going on? The void sacred martial arenas have appeared at the same time. Ouyang Yuanfeng was surprised by the lineup of the sacred mountain. Those were the void sacred martial arenas, which would only appear after breaking out of the sacred martial secret world. Only the first 32 people to break out of the sacred martial secret world will be able to set foot on the 32 void sacred martial arenas and qualify for the final battle. But now, 32 void sacred martial arenas had appeared at the same time, which was very strange. How can the void sacred martial arenas appear at the same time? Many people were surprised. This was the first time they had encountered such a thing. The sacred martial secret world has already been affected, and I'm afraid that everything has been affected. A powerhouse said, trying to figure out the reason. If the sacred martial secret world was affected, then everything should be affected. The 32 void sacred martial arenas appeared, dazzling with golden light. They were incomparably sacred. Swoosh, swoosh. In the sacred martial secret world, many people suddenly raised their eyes and looked at the 32 void sacred martial arenas. Everyone was a little surprised. They knew that one could only set foot on the void sacred martial arenas after breaking through the sacred martial secret world. But now it seemed that 32 void sacred martial arenas had appeared at the same time. Void sacred martial arenas, quick! Someone was the first to react. No matter what the reason was, the void sacred martial arenas had appeared, and there was nothing wrong with seizing the void sacred martial arenas. Swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, from all directions, silhouettes directly rushed up. Their auras surged, and the silhouettes directly swept toward the void sacred martial arenas at a low altitude. Ow! Some people's cultivation levels were not high enough, and they could only use their vitality to transform into forms. They wanted to ascend the void sacred martial arenas. Suddenly, thousands of beasts roared, and light filled the sky. The auras gathered together, and it was extremely shocking. Everything happened in a very short period of time. This scene was like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate. Countless of the most outstanding young people in the central state were competing at the same time. The void sacred martial arenas were their dragon's gate. Only by ascending the void sacred martial arenas would they be qualified to enter the real final battle. Only then would they be able to become famous in the world. Otherwise, no matter how strong they were, it would be useless. The sacred martial assembly was fair and just. However, any fairness would have flaws, and there would also be some shortcomings. Puff, puff. Chapter 798. The void sacred martial platform was not a place that could be reached as one wished. Without absolute strength, it was impossible to set foot on it. However, this was an opportunity. No one wanted to give it up. At least they had to try. Whoosh, whoosh, whoo. The beastly roars were like thunder, and the sound of the wind breaking was endless. One figure after another rushed out and headed toward the 32 void sacred martial platforms. Puff! People kept falling down while vomiting blood. The scene was horrifying. However, there are also people who really set foot on the void sacred martial platforms. Their eyes were filled with ecstasy. They were all talented and had obtained the recognition of the void sacred martial platforms. They had passed some kind of test of the sacred martial secret world and were qualified to set foot on it. Boom! Get down! However, at this moment, there were even stronger people who went up and attacked directly. Each void sacred martial platform could only be set foot on by one person. There was no room for a second person. Competition and confrontation erupted in an instant, accompanied by the terrifying momentum of the sacred martial secret world's collapse. The whole mountain range was filled with a mighty aura. The sky and the ground shook, and the mountains shook. Thousands of beasts in the forest roared. The sacred martial secret world was collapsing. The 32 void sacred martial platforms were not in one place. They were scattered everywhere and were separated by the sacred martial secret world at this moment. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of exceptionally powerful aura soared into the sky. The most dazzling figures also moved one after another. One after another, divine and graceful figures used all kinds of techniques to soar into the sky, directly ascending to the void sacred martial platforms. Gong Qianxing, Lin Fan, Lord Shaoxi, Feng Qingnong, Qi Tianxian, Chen Yanhuan, and Li Qingwei were the most dazzling figures. They went straight up to the void sacred martial platforms and defeated their opponents with a raise of their hands. Naren Ryu had been waiting for Su Yi. His eyes were as dazzling as the sun. Unfortunately, there was a spatial ripple in front of him that separated the space. He could not cross it. He could only watch Su Yi in front of him, but he could not make a move. Su Yi's eyes darkened as he stared at Naren Ryu. His murderous intent did not diminish. He wanted to kill this holy son Naren Ryu as well. However, something seemed to have happened in the sacred martial secret world, and he was unable to do so. According to Su Yi's thoughts, killing Mo Beiming and Chu Zhonghuan was already enough to drive the people of the sacred mountain crazy. If he also killed Naren Ryu, then the younger generation of the sacred mountain wouldn't be able to return. Only then would the sacred mountain remember this lesson. Unfortunately, he was unable to fulfill his wish. Su Yi felt somewhat regretful. Su Yi knew that Naren Ryu from the sacred mountain was very strong. From his aura, it was enough to know that this person was much stronger than Chu Zhonghuan. However, Su Yi was also somewhat confident in his own cultivation strength. Although Naren Ryu's identity meant that he probably had endless trump cards, Su Yi was not afraid if he really wanted to kill him. Although he still needed to cultivate the Great Void Immortal Sea for 2 more times, his combat strength was increasing exponentially. VY270_3FR7H 5% T9N. Something seems to have happened in the sacred martial secret world. The Void sacred martial platforms have appeared. No matter what, let's get on one of them first. Su Chun came to Su Yi's side and raised his head, looking at the Void sacred martial platforms that were shining with golden light. Then let's go. Su Yi nodded at Su Chun and looked around. In the layers of spatial ripples, he saw many familiar figures. Xinjian Gates Mu Yao, Sita Myung, Oluo, Sakura, Asaka, Jin Wuk, and the others were all fighting for the Void sacred martial platforms. There were also the top disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions. Those familiar figures were extremely dazzling as they swept in all directions. Let's start. I'll go first. Su Chun smiled. His white robe fluttered and a faint light flickered in his clear eyes on his handsome face. At the same time, the yuan qi under his feet moved. From his tall and straight figure, a white yuan qi light enveloped his entire body. A powerful pressure swept out and spread out. He directly leaped into the air. His feet moved a few times in the air, and his yuan qi rippled. In an unbelievable way, he directly stepped onto one of the Void sacred martial platforms. There was already someone on the Void sacred martial platform. It was a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect. His aura was outstanding, and his cultivation was not ordinary. His eyes darkened, and he immediately threw a punch at Su Chun. Su Chun faintly smiled and didn't care. He stepped to the side and dodged the punch. At the same time, a hand seal was formed, and a claw directly grabbed the former's fist. The white yuan qi light fluctuated like a cloud, and the claw print was like a dragon claw that directly grabbed the fist. It emitted a great pressure, and for no reason, its aura made the young man tremble. The yuan qi in his body was blocked, and his expression changed greatly. Go down. Su Chun shouted and directly threw the disciple down from the Void sacred martial platform. The disciple was unable to control his body and directly flew down from the Void sacred martial platform. Yin Lin looked at the golden sacred martial stage in the sky. He didn't dare to show his face under his hood, but his eyes were filled with passion. His passion wasn't just for the sacred martial stage. Originally, he had hoped to enter the sacred martial stage, but at that moment, Yin Lin felt that the sacred martial stage was only SOSO. His passion and passion were for the top cultivators of the Central Continent. Millions of top cultivators of the Central Continent were competing against each other. As a young cultivator, who wouldn't feel their blood boiling? Who wouldn't feel excited and want to compete against each other? Boom! Yin Lin also moved. His aura soared to the heavens, and the scattered black scales on his body suddenly opened up. A powerful aura gushed out and rushed out. This was a grand event for the young people. All the young people of the Central Continent were competing with each other. Everyone's gaze was originally on the Bawang sects Yi Su. They were looking forward to the battle between the Bawang sects Yi Su and the Sacred Mountains chosen Naren Ryu. However, The scene at this moment made the outside world focus their attention on the sacred martial assembly, especially the major forces. Although the sacred martial secret world seemed to have a problem and the void sacred martial platform appeared at the same time, it was naturally important for the disciples of the sect to ascend the void sacred martial platform first, especially the 5 sects, 3 factions, and some other major forces. Almost all the disciples of the Sacred Mountain were killed by the Bawang sect's Isu. This gave the disciples of the other forces more opportunities. Otherwise, according to the previous sacred martial assemblies, the Sacred Mountain would have occupied at least 10 out of the 32 void sacred martial platforms, or even more. Su Yi's gaze also shifted away from Nalan Ruyu's body. Under such an atmosphere, he couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement in his heart. This was a true test. The entire younger generation of the Central Continent was competing for supremacy. Chapter 799. Whoosh! Su Yi bent his body slightly, and Yuan Qi swept through the soles of his feet. Abruptly, his body leapt up, leaping over 100 feet into the air and landing on the sacred martial platform. His aura was ferocious and his robe fluttered. His landing caused the sacred martial platform to tremble. On the sacred martial platform, there were 3 young men and a young woman who were fighting. All of them had extraordinary auras. When they saw Su Yi land on the platform, the 4 extraordinary young men suddenly stopped. 4 pairs of eyes looked at Su Yi. Fear surged from the depths of their hearts. Their faces looked as though they were about to cry, but no tears came out. The 4 of them were extraordinary. All of them were extremely talented and were at the peak of their generation in their respective sections. However, they had never imagined that Su of the Overlord sect would actually set his eyes on the void sacred martial stage they were in. Based on their understanding of themselves, even if there were a few more of them, they would not be a match for Chu Zhonghuan. Chu Zhonghuan's fate was still in front of them. Let's go. The 4 of them wanted to cry, but had no tears. However, they had no choice but to force a smile at Su Yi. Their smiles were uglier than their crying faces. They nodded at Su Yi and jumped down without hesitation. They had no intention of fighting with Su Yi. Su Yi was also shocked. He had not expected that the 4 of them would not fight with him. Stepping onto the sacred martial platform in the air, Isu looked down from a high vantage point. There were already some familiar figures on the sacred martial platforms. Qi Tianxian, Gong Qianxing, Li Qingwei, Chen Yinhuan, Mu Yao, Jin Wuk, Feng Qingnong, Xiao Xijun, and the young leader from the Imperial Sky Palace. The true peak of the younger generation quickly defeated their opponents. Not many people dared to compete with them. Compared to them, it was much easier. On the other sacred martial platforms in the sky, the competition was the most intense. Intense battles continued without end. Blade lights, sword shadows, beast roars, and auras soared into the sky. Most of the youths who were able to ascend to the void sacred martial platform had similar cultivation levels. One could imagine the intensity of the chaotic battle for the void sacred martial platform. None of them wanted to fall behind. Setting foot on the void sacred martial stage was equivalent to a carp leaping through the Dragon Gate. Being able to battle and become the world's name was related to their future. None of them wanted to give it their all. Whether they would become famous in one battle or be drowned in the sacred martial assembly, it all depended on whether they could ascend to the void sacred martial stage. Fortunately, not everyone could step onto the sacred martial stage. Otherwise, the competition would be even more intense. Su Yi also saw Situ Muyang, Sakura Asaka, Ryugan River, and other familiar figures. Their cultivations were very strong, and they were outstanding figures of the younger generation. They were all like proud sons of heaven. However, this was the sacred martial assembly. There were geniuses everywhere. Every single one of them was a proud son of heaven. The proud sons of heaven were fighting for supremacy. It was difficult for their strength to be truly outstanding in the sacred martial assembly. Many people stared at Su Chen. Not many of them knew Su Chen's strength. They all thought that Su Chen was a pushover, and all of them rushed towards the void sacred martial stage where Su Chen was standing. This is too much. Su Chun felt helpless. No one dared to provoke Su Yi, but he was being swarmed by people. He couldn't help but become fiercer. A vast and mighty aura surged, and Yuan Qi surged. A terrifying storm enveloped the surroundings. Several figures on the void sacred martial stage vomited blood and were sent flying. Not far away, on a void sacred martial stage, Su Yi saw a strange scene. Yin Lin's body was covered in scarlet light, and the scales on his body were like pieces of broken armor. His aura was abnormally strong. His figure shot out like a scarlet lightning, and he waved his fist. No one was his match. Wherever his fist passed, the powerful youths would vomit blood and be sent flying. Clang, clang. Saber light and sword shadows emitted a sharp aura. However, when they landed on Yin Lin's fist, they were blocked by his scales. Sparks flew and clanged. Yin Lin's scales didn't even leave a mark on his body. However, those extraordinary sabers and sword were sent flying, and some of them were even chipped. This guy is definitely not ordinary. Su Yi's expression changed. According to Merciless West, Yin Lin's state was half human and half beast. However, looking at Yin Lin now, Su Yi reckoned that Yin Lin wasn't simple. Those who were able to step onto the void, sacred martial stage weren't simple. However, no one was Yin Lin's match. They were all defeated by Yin Lin. Not many people could achieve this level of combat strength. With his sharp soul power, Su Yi felt that someone was looking at him. Following his senses, he saw a pair of eyes that were as dazzling as the sun shooting towards him. The owner of this gaze was none other than Naren Ryu. At this moment, Naren Ryu had also stepped onto a sacred martial stage in the sky. She was shrouded in light and looked like a deity that had descended to the mortal world. Her eyes were frightening. Everyone could feel the aura on her body, but no one dared to provoke her. As a result, a strange scene occurred on the 32 sacred martial platforms. No one dared to compete with Su Yi and Naren Ryu on the sacred martial platform. No one dared to step onto it. Gong Qian Xing, Li Qingwei, Mu Yao, Jian Wuk, and the others were all extremely famous. Occasionally, there would be people who wanted to try, but there were only a few of them. They wanted to become famous with a single battle, but they all ended up in failure. As for the remaining void, sacred martial platforms, intense fights were taking place, causing a storm to surge. Good luck. I must step onto the void, sacred martial platform and strengthen the sect. Senior brother is mighty. Amidst the thousands of peaks, the crowd was boiling. Everyone was shouting and cheering for the disciples of their respective sections. The eyes of the major forces in the outside world were fixed on the void, sacred martial platform. They all hoped that one more disciple of their sect could stand on the void, sacred martial platform. The group of powerhouses surrounding the sacred mountain all had livid faces. Almost all the disciples of the sacred mountain had been killed. There were only a few people left. Look, why did that Bawang sexy Su come down? Suddenly, many people saw a strange scene. Bawang Sex Isu had already occupied a void, sacred martial platform, but for some reason, he had leaped away. What's going on? Many people were astonished and puzzled. Bastard, Sacred Mountain will definitely crush your bones and scatter your ashes. Among the Sacred Mountain's disciples, an elder suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs. His eyes were red and his body was like lightning. He couldn't help but rush forward. Chapter 800. Su Yi killed every Sacred Mountain disciple he saw. Since he had already killed so many, killing one more didn't matter. Su Yi's silhouette shot up, forcibly ascending the sacred martial platform. The young man from the Sacred Mountain was overjoyed when he stepped onto the void, sacred martial platform. But when he saw the fierce figure, his face turned pale and his legs went weak. From the void projection, the young man also saw Isu of the Bawang sect slaughtering the Sacred Mountain disciples. Chu Zhanghuan had been killed, so he naturally didn't think that this guy had come just to greet him. He also wasn't stupid enough to think that he was strong enough to fight with this terrifying fiend in front of him. Run! Without any hesitation, the young man's body trembled as he fled. He didn't think much and was about to jump off the void sacred martial platform. Cheat on section B of a new chapter, asterisk colon, but it was too late. Su Yi's figure flashed like lightning, like a rock spreading its wings. He stretched out his hand like an eagle hunting its prey and clawed at the young man's anklet. Still want to run? Murderous intent surged. Sui came prepared. He suddenly pulled hard, and his yuan qi surged. With a suppressive aura, he dragged the young man back and smashed him onto the void sacred martial platform. Boom! Under the tremendous force, the entire void sacred martial platform trembled and golden light rippled. Puff! The young man from the sacred mountain spat out blood. The yuan qi light shield that he had hurriedly set up collapsed, and the crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard from his body. Then he closed his eyes weakly. Bang! At the same time, an astonishing muffled sound came from the sacred martial secret world. The elder from the sacred mountain was hit by an invisible force, and his body was knocked back, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Su raised his eyes and sneered. He threw the body of the young man from the sacred mountain at the elder. The body rushed out like a cannonball and slammed heavily into the ripples in the space, instantly turning into a bloody mist. Boy, this old man will definitely tear you to pieces to vent my hatred. The elder from the sacred mountain stabilized his retreat. His face was ashen and his eyes were bloodshot. He roared and the blood in his body surged. Another mouthful of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. That was his grandson, who died in front of him, but he couldn't do anything about it. He's too fierce. He dared to provoke the people from the sacred mountain. This is unprecedented and will never happen again. I don't dare to say that no one will be able to do it in the future, but at the very least, it's unprecedented. Many people were dumbfounded and they couldn't calm down for a long time. That young man was too ferocious. Who dared to provoke the sacred mountain like that? He will be my idol in the future. Some of the young people from the sacred martial palace sect of Zhou used sect, martial palace, martial sect, a martial sect, martial sect. Isu was so fierce that the disciples of the sacred mountain could not withstand a single blow. It was enough to show that the Bawang sect was not simple. If one could become a disciple of the Bawang sect, it would be more glorious and promising than the disciples of the sacred mountain. I like him so much. Some young women's eyes rippled as they looked at the fierce figure from afar. Their hearts were moved. Shoo, do you want to get into big trouble? Some old people kept quiet. Isu from the Bawang sect had probably thoroughly provoked and angered the sacred mountain. The sacred mountain would not let Isu go. At this moment, anyone who stood next to Isu from the Bawang sect was tantamount to provoking the sacred mountain. It would be a disaster. He's too fierce. The experts from the 5 sects and 3 factions, including the Saruga elder, were shocked at this moment. Isu from the Bawang sect was too fierce. This kind of fierceness did not only come from his abnormal strength, but also his fierce way of doing things. He killed every disciple of the sacred mountain he saw. In the entire Zhongzhou, who dared to do so, Vice Palace Master Guanlan and the other experts of the Yuqian Palace looked much calmer, but the shock in their hearts was even greater, especially Vice Palace Master Guanlan. Looking at what that fierce guy was doing, it was clearly a slap to the face of the sacred mountain. It had to be said that the Yuqian Palace did not dare to do so. But that guy did it, and to the extreme, killing every disciple of the sacred mountain he saw. Perhaps the sacred mountain was really angry now. Merciless West and the Green Emperor's expressions did not change much. With cold intent, they stared at the movements in the sacred martial secret world. But Merciless West was also shocked. Back then, he asked Su Yi to participate in the sacred martial assembly in the Zhongzhou. His condition was that Su Yi could enter the top 2 and join the so-called Bawang sect. But now Merciless West was shocked. This guy's strength could not be more obvious now. Even Chu Zhonghuan from the Sacred Mountain could not withstand a single blow. In this sacred martial assembly, only the last one, Naren Ruyu, could fight against him. Bang, bang, bang. Above the void, there were continuous explosions, as if the world was sinking and the universe was turning upside down. An astonishing aura swept across thousands of miles, causing the mountains and peaks to tremble. Countless figures could not help but tremble backward. The eyes of the cultivators from all sides trembled as they looked at the sky in front of them. The images that were reflecting the void all collapsed in the explosion. Layers of spatial ripples dissipated, and the dazzling light dimmed. Rumble. At the same time, on the 32 void, sacred martial platforms, golden light was still shining. The light was hazy, and the divine aura was fluctuating. But one figure after another was sent flying. On each void, sacred martial platform, only one figure was left. The void sacred martial platform that he had just left was also stepped onto by someone. The second person did not have time to jump onto it. As soon as he got close, he was sent flying. The entire sacred martial secret world seemed to have a problem at this moment. Rumble. The earth shook and the mountains shook. The entrance to the sacred martial secret world was cracking open. The earth was shaking, and the mountains were trembling. Huge rocks rolled down, revealing a huge square. The 5 sects and 3 factions, the Imperial Palace and the Sacred Mountain, the top 10 forces, surrounded this huge square. Countless onlookers from all directions were shocked. Many people had never seen such a scene. This method was too shocking. The scene was so shocking that it seemed to be able to move mountains and seas. It seems that the real battle is about to begin. This is the method that the experts from the Sacred Mountain, the 5 sects and 3 factions, and the Imperial Palace worked together to set up. An old man opened his mouth and explained to the juniors beside him. These amazing methods were all set up by the experts from the Sacred Mountain, the 5 sects and 3 factions, and the Imperial Palace. Only a powerful soul controller could set up such a scene. Suddenly, the 32 void, sacred martial platforms changed again. Golden light shot up and fell from the void onto the square. Chapter 801. The 32 void, sacred martial platforms had expanded to a size of over 100 feet. They had also risen from the ground and were square in shape. They were like golden islands and mountains that appeared in the huge square. On the giant rocks formed by the 32 void, sacred martial platforms, there were 32 figures standing on each of them. 32 rays of light shrouded the 32 figures. Countless gazes were filled with awe and shock. All movement in the sacred martial secret world had disappeared. All the young disciples who had participated in the sacred martial secret world had appeared in the secret world. There were no more illusions or dangers around them. The barbaric beasts in the mountains had also gone into hibernation. As it returned to normal, the experts from the 5 sects and 3 factions looked on. It seemed that the sacred martial secret world had returned to normal. However, it was obvious that the sacred martial secret world had completely collapsed. The sacred martial secret world has been damaged. However, the 32 void, sacred martial platforms were set up separately. It doesn't seem to have caused much of an impact. The other experts from the 5 sects and 3 factions noticed that the sacred martial secret world had been destroyed. However, the 32 void, sacred martial platforms were set up separately. Therefore, it didn't seem to have caused much of an impact. Under countless gazes, everyone was staring at the 32 void, sacred martial platforms that had transformed into giant rocks. The 32 figures were the true geniuses of this sacred martial assembly. They were the geniuses of the geniuses. Many geniuses had regretful gazes. They had fought for the void, sacred martial platforms, but had failed. They had no chance to set foot on the void, sacred martial platforms. He immediately scanned the 32 void, sacred martial platforms. At this moment, more than half of the familiar figures were on them. Mu Yao from the Xinjian Gate, Jian Wuk, Qi Tianxian from the Skyblaze sect, Gong Qianxing from the Heavenly Mystery sect, Li Qingwei from the Blue Cloud sect, Feng Qingnong from the 3 Yuan Gate, Lin Fan from the Distinct Void sect, Chen Yanhuan from the Clear Sky sect, Xiao Si Jun from the Beast Emperor sect, Naren Ruyu from the Sacred Mountain, and Su Chun, Yin Lin was also standing on one of the huge golden rocks. He was wearing a hood, and his aura was fluctuating. He had also stepped onto one of the sacred martial stages. He couldn't help being shocked, but at the same time, he was also happy. There were also some figures from the 5 sects and 3 factions that He had seen before. However, there were still many figures who were completely unfamiliar to him. But at this moment, they were all standing on the 32 void, sacred martial platforms, proving their strength. Gu Brat, you killed a disciple of the Holy Mountain. Today I will grind your bones to dust. At this moment, an ear-piercing and gloomy voice swept over with surging, killing intent. A figure arrived in the sky like a bolt of lightning, bringing with it a gust of wind and clouds as boundless light erupted. A terrifying, icy aura suddenly descended. It was as if it could instantly freeze one's yuan, qi, and blood, and cause one's soul to palpitate. Suyi's expression changed drastically. A sharp killing intent locked onto his body. Instantly, the heavenly origin demon soul in his mind began to tremble. However, it was also at this moment that the heavenly origin demon soul in Suyi's mind seemed to have received the most direct provocation. It suddenly fluctuated, and the origin supreme technique was also activated in his body. The blazing qi expelled the icy qi that had entered his body. Buzz! He felt that the mysterious spatial light ball, which had been motionless all this time, seemed to be attracted by something at this moment. It radiated light and emitted a sonorous sound. Chila, an icy handprint, like a sharp claw, twisted the void. The terrifying icy aura was monstrous. It quickly covered the golden boulder that it occupied with a layer of white frost. The temperature in the void was bone-chilling. It instantly grabbed at Sui. After the icy handprint, Bing Cauldron's livid face appeared. His eyes were surging with killing intent. At this moment, the sacred martial secret world had disappeared and everything had returned to normal. He wanted to freeze Sui and then crush him. Oh no! Almost at the same time, Merciless West and Green Emperor rushed out. Their expressions changed drastically. However, Deputy Palace Master Wanlan did not move. There was a cold smile on his face. Bing Cauldron, how dare you touch the people of the Yuqian Palace? Do you think I don't exist? Almost at the same time, an old voice resounded like thunder. It reverberated in all directions and shook the mountains. A figure quietly appeared in front of Sui like a ghost. At the same time, a fist blasted out. The void in front of the fist directly caved in. A vast aura fluctuation directly blocked the icy claw. Boom! The two collided in an instant. Light filled the sky. The void rumbled and the ground shook. The golden boulder only swayed, but the ground around the golden boulder was cracking. Under the vast aura, the surroundings trembled. For no reason, they were frightened. Just the aura that spread out made the surrounding onlookers feel a chill in their hearts. Chila, the claw was shattered. Elder Bing Cauldron was knocked back dozens of feet in the void. Only then did he stabilize his body. A trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He looked up at the former at the first moment. There was some shock in his eyes. He could not help but say, "Gyue, it's you again." A figure appeared in front of Sui. It was an old figure, but he was full of vigor. His face was rosy, and his silver-white hair was combed into a bun. Under a gray robe, he did not pay attention to Bing Cauldron. Instead, he looked back at Sui and smiled. Don't worry, you are the sole controller tested by the Yuqian Palace. You are closely related to the Yuqian Palace. No one can touch you. Palace Master Gyue. Sui bowed. He did not expect Palace Master Gyue to come and help him again. Master. Two figures also landed beside Sui amidst the sound of breaking wind. They were none other than Shi Wuqing and the Green Emperor. No problem. Sui nodded slightly. Now that he had left the sacred martial secret world, he no longer had any advantage. Everything was reversed. He had to be wary of the sacred mountain. There was another sound of wind breaking in the void in the distance. From the direction of Zhongzhou City, there were many figures rushing over. In a few flashes, they appeared in the sky. There were more than 10 figures standing in the air. The bright light of Yuan Qi was like the sun in the sky. Their aura was even more monstrous. For no reason, it caused the wind to rise and clouds to surge. These figures standing in the air were all very powerful. So we looked up. The two in front were Vice Palace Master Yin Ding and Vice Palace Master Yin Lu. Behind them were also experts of the Yuqian Palace. Vice Palace Master Guan Lan smiled. Such a big thing happened. He knew that the Sacred Mountain was really angry. Although he was not afraid of Bing Cauldron, there were still many experts in the Sacred Mountain. Therefore, he had already informed Palace Master Guyue. At this moment, Palace Master Guyue also came at the right time. With Palace Master Guyue here, at least the people of the Sacred Mountain would not be able to make any waves today. The sudden appearance of Palace Master Guyue and the sudden arrival of many experts of the Yuqian Palace shocked everyone. Chapter 802. Whoosh Whoosh. Seeing the experts from Yuqian Palace coming, the experts from Sacred Mountain, Zhongzhou City, Ouyang Yuanfeng, and the others immediately came to stand behind Bing Fu. Among the crowd, there were several Origin Emperors and Origin Void Realm experts who stepped into the air. They came from Xinyuan Sect, Tiangang Sect, Tianyang Sect, and others. The most outstanding disciples of the younger generation in their mountain sect had almost all fallen at the hands of the Overlord sect's Yi Su. At this moment, their expressions were not much better than those from Sacred Mountain. They couldn't wait to tear Su Yi into pieces. Guyue, you can't protect this kid. Not even the entire Yuqian Palace can protect him for killing our Sacred Mountain's disciples. Bing Fu's expression was gloomy. He was afraid of Guyue and the people from Zhongzhou City's Yuqian Palace. However, if he didn't die today, Sacred Mountain would lose face. Sacred Mountain wouldn't hesitate to go to war with Yuqian Palace. Palace Master Guyue's eyes didn't reveal anything. He was slightly moved. He already knew the situation on the way here and knew the severity of the matter. Chapter hashtag go to WG. This was Sacred Mountain's face. Even if Sacred Mountain was afraid of Yuqian Palace, they would still bite the bullet and go to war. Once the war started, things would go out of control. This wasn't what Yuqian Palace wanted. However, it wasn't that Yuqian Palace was afraid of trouble. Yi Su, why did you kill Sacred Mountain's disciples? Palace Master Guyue looked at Su Yi and asked, Sacred Mountain's people wanted to kill me first. They set up a death trap and used the soul-controlling talisman. However, Sacred Mountain's disciples were too weak. They couldn't kill me and were killed by me instead. Su Yi replied, looking at Guyue with respect. Su Yi was grateful that Yuqian Palace had protected him time and time again. If it wasn't for Yuqian Palace, he would have died today. Palace Master Guyue nodded and looked at Bing Fu. You heard it. Sacred Mountain's disciples set up the death trap first. However, Sacred Mountain's disciples were too weak and were killed instead. I'm afraid you can't blame Yi Su. Your Sacred Mountain's disciples set up a death trap for me in the Sacred Martial Secret World and even used the soul-controlling talisman. Yuqian Palace won't let this matter go. It's one-sided story. Bing Cauldron felt a little guilty. He naturally knew the cause and effect of this matter. Many people saw it with their own eyes. It shouldn't be hard to find out the truth. Sacred Mountain's disciples wanted to kill me. Can I fight back? Su Yi raised his head and looked at Bing Cauldron coldly. Xu Zhanghuan actually had the soul manipulation killing talisman. Su Yi still remembered the soul manipulation killing talisman that was auctioned at the Spirit Treasure Pavilion not long ago. It was at the 3rd level of Origin Emperor Realm. It was probably the soul manipulation killing talisman. Therefore, it was impossible for Bing Cauldron to not know. Brat, it's not your turn to speak. Sacred Mountain will investigate this matter thoroughly. Who do you think you are? You're just an ant. Why would our Sacred Mountain's disciples muster so many people to kill you? Bing Fu stared at Su Yi maliciously. He didn't know why, but when he felt the young man's gaze, his heart trembled. He panicked for no reason. However, this feeling only lasted for a moment before it disappeared. I never said that the Sacred Mountain's disciples mustered so many people to kill me. How did you know? Don't tell me that you're the one who arranged for dozens of Sacred Mountain's disciples to kill me? Su Yi sneered, staring at the ice cauldron. This, Bing Fu was stunned. His face turned ashen. He didn't think too much about it. This was tantamount to exposing himself. Ha! Brat, don't be so sharp-tongued. I'm an elder of Sacred Mountain. I have no enmity with you. Why would I need to kill a nameless brat like you? What a joke. Who would believe it? Bing Fu sneered loudly, trying to ease the awkwardness on his face. Sacred Mountain's disciple Ouyang Jinwei couldn't even withstand a single blow from me. Do you think I've hurt Sacred Mountain's reputation? Su Yi looked straight at Bing Fu. The corner of his mouth lifted into a cold smile. The reason you want to kill me is very simple. The nebula Ganoderma that you wanted at the auction of Spirit Treasures Pavilion ended up in my hands. You couldn't compete with me for the mysterious wooden box left behind by the experts of Demon Subduing Sect. This is what you wanted to see the most. If Sacred Mountain took it, it might cause trouble and the Demon Subduing Sect would come knocking on their door. However, it's naturally best that it ended up in my hands. Therefore, if you want to kill me and steal my treasures, you can kill me without anyone knowing. That's really killing many birds with one stone. His voice was mixed with Yuan Qi, reverberating in all directions. It was enough for everyone to hear clearly. At this point, Su Yi no longer had any scruples. The nebula Ganoderma and the mysterious wooden box of Demon Subduing Sect were in his hands. It wasn't a secret. Su Yi knew that the Sacred Mountain's formation and the soul manipulation killing talisman, which was at the third level of the Origin Emperor realm, weren't just trying to take his life. Perhaps in Sacred Mountain's heart, he wasn't worth the third-level Origin Emperor realm soul manipulation talisman. Su Yi could also imagine Sacred Mountain's true motive. Hula. As Su Yi's voice spread out, the crowd instantly seized the opportunity and many gazes surged. Especially on the thousands of peaks of the mountains, many obscure auras suddenly fluctuated. All the experts present knew what the mysterious wooden box left behind by the experts of Demon Subduing Sect represented. The experts of the 5 sects and 3 factions had complicated looks in their eyes. Hearing up to this point, they had already formed their own conclusions about the cause and effect of this matter. For the sake of the mysterious wooden chest of the Demon Subduing Sect, the Saint Mountain's actions were within their expectations. Brat, you're slandering me. Do you have any evidence? Otherwise, I will definitely punish you for speaking without thinking and slandering an elder of Sacred Mountain. You deserve death. Bing Fu's eyes flickered between green and red as he shouted. This was indeed his plan, but now that the brat had said it out loud, even if he didn't have any evidence, he could deny it. However, he knew that it didn't matter whether he explained it or not. He was afraid that not many people would believe him. I can testify. I saw it with my own eyes. The disciples of Sacred Mountain had set up a trap to kill Yi Su. Unfortunately, the disciples of Sacred Mountain were too weak. They were no match for Yi Su. Each and every one of them couldn't withstand a single blow. Su Chan spoke from a golden boulder. There was a dazzling light in his clear eyes. There was an indifferent expression on his incomparably handsome face as he looked at the ice cauldron. His voice was not loud, but it spread in all directions, allowing many people to clearly hear him. I can also testify. I saw it with my own eyes. The disciples of Sacred Mountain had set up a trap to kill Yi Su. In the end, they were killed by Yi Su instead. Yin Lin hesitated for a moment before he raised his head and spoke. His voice was a little soft, but it was enough for many people to hear it clearly. However, it was not enough for the experts present to hear it clearly. Swish, swish. Chapter 803. These 2 youths actually dared to stand beside the Bawang sect's Yi Su. They were going against the Sacred Mountain. Where did they come from? Someone was puzzled. The 2 youths were standing on the giant rock formed by the sacred martial stage, which was enough to prove their strength. They did not know where they came from, but they actually dared to go against the Sacred Mountain. Su Yi's eyes flickered as he looked at Su Chun and Yin Lin in the distance. These 2 fellows will likely be targeted by the Sacred Mountain. You dare to speak without thinking like that, brat. Kwang Guilin could not help but roar in anger. She stared coldly at Su Chun and Yinlin. I saw it with my own eyes. How can it be allowed to speak? Su Chun was not afraid. He glanced at Kwang Guialon indifferently. Who are you? Tell me your names. Bing Fu's face was ashen and extremely cold. He stared at Su Chun and Yinlin. These two youths should have some background. As Cauldron, you should know what is going on. My Heavenly Command Palace will also investigate this matter thoroughly. Palace Master Guyue said. He was afraid that Bing Fu would threaten the two youths. He already knew what was going on. Guyue, your Yuqian Palace can't protect this brat. Bing Fu's face was cold. Do you want to fight? I'll accompany you. Palace Master Guyue waved his sleeve, and a burst of qi rushed out. It surged around his body, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Yuan qi swept out like a storm. Boom! In an instant, the qi of the experts of Yuqian Palace surged. Yin Lu, Yin Ding, Guanlon, and the other palace masters wrapped themselves in Yuan qi. Seeing this, the experts of the Sacred Mountain, Xian Yuan sect, Tianyang sect, and Tiangang sect also surged their qi. The two sides each occupied half of the space. Wind blew and clouds surged. Their qi was vast, and they were ready to fight. The surrounding spectators trembled. The vast qi made their hearts tremble and their hair stand on end. If the two sides really started fighting, they would not even have the strength to be affected. Is the Sacred Martial Assembly going to continue or not? Just as swords were drawn and a great battle was about to break out, a faint voice spread. The voice was not loud, but it was deafening when it landed in one's ears. Many gazes looked over. The owner of the voice was a short, childlike old man from the Divine Sword sect. His old face had a calm expression. However, the invisible aura on his body caused people to tremble for no reason. When they saw this old man, the gazes of many of the experts present were secretly moved. This old man was none other than Elder Su of Suruga. Sword Yama Suruga. An expert murmured as fear flashed in his eyes. For those who knew of the Sword Yama, they all knew how terrifying the Sword Yama was. They couldn't help but feel trepidation in their hearts. No one had expected Sword Yama to stand out at this moment. Many people were waiting, full of doubts. Sword Yama Suruga represented Shunjian Gate. If he stood out at this moment and stood on the side of the Sacred Mountain, it was very likely to affect the 5 sects and 3 factions. If he had the support of the 5 sects and 3 factions, then Palace Master Guyue and the others would definitely be in trouble. Under the gazes of many people, Suruga's gaze swept around. Finally, his gaze swept over Su, intentionally or unintentionally. He continued to speak slowly. There are no rules in the sacred martial secret world. There has never been a written rule that no one can kill in the sacred martial secret world. If you are afraid of death, why participate in the sacred martial assembly? No matter what the reason is, if you are not strong enough to die in the sacred martial secret world, it is God's will. But I remember that when the sacred martial assembly was held by the sacred martial mountain, the 5 sects and 3 factions, and the imperial palace, there was a written rule that no one could disturb the sacred martial assembly during the sacred martial assembly. His voice reverberated through the air, shaking the heavens. When they heard Elder Suruga's words, many people's expressions changed. Originally, many people thought that Suruga would speak for the Sacred Mountain. After all, the 5 sects and 3 factions were inextricably linked to the Sacred Mountain. Between the Imperial Palace and the Sacred Mountain, the Shunjian Gate would most likely choose to side with the Sacred Mountain. But now, many people did not expect Elder Suruga's words. However, people with discerning eyes could tell that Suruga did not seem to be helping either side at this moment. He was not even speaking for the Imperial Palace, but for Yi Su of the Bawang sect. Bing Fu and the others' eyes twitched. They thought that Suruga would be partial to the Sacred Mountain, but they did not expect that Suruga would not be partial to the Sacred Mountain. He did not even seem to be supporting the Imperial Palace. It seemed that he was not helping either side, but he seemed to be speaking for Yi Su of the Bawang sect. Su raised his eyes and looked at the thin figure in the distance. With his keen soul power, Su-yi could feel that Elder Saruga seemed to be paying attention to him. The Sacred Martial Arts Assembly has a written rule that no one is allowed to disturb it. In the Sacred Martial Secret World, there is indeed no written rule that states that no one is allowed to kill. An expert from the 5 sects and 3 factions spoke up. It was obvious that Elder Saruga had a very high status among the elders of the 5 sects and 3 factions. He could influence many people. Although the 5 sects and 3 factions were inextricably linked to the Sacred Mountain, this relationship was definitely not like that of a family. This time, the disciples of the Sacred Mountain had suffered a great loss. More disciples from the 5 sects and 3 factions had entered the top 32, which was naturally more advantageous for the 5 sects and 3 factions. That's right. No one is allowed to disturb the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly. The Sacred Martial Arts Assembly will continue. Bing Fu looked around and suppressed the livid expression on his face. He glanced at Su-yi and then raised his eyes. His voice was cold, but he could not suppress it much. He said to the people around him, "There seems to be some small problems in the Sacred Martial Secret World. Fortunately, it does not seem to have affected the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly too much. The 32 void sacred martial stages have already been taken, and the 32 disciples have successfully stepped onto the void sacred martial stages. I wonder if anyone from the 5 sects and 3 factions has any objections to the current result? The impact is not big. That's it. The Sacred Martial Arts Assembly can continue." Elder Su-yun of the Blue Cloud sect nodded and said, "No objections. The assembly can continue." Elder Jianwanyin of the Tianxian sect nodded. Now that the Tianxian sect also had 2 disciples standing on the void sacred martial stages, he had no objections. However, Jianwanyin was very puzzled. Logically speaking, so many disciples of the Sacred Mountain had died, but Lu Xiaohu had not been able to enter. Logically speaking, with Lu Xiaohu's strength, he had a great chance to enter. After that, no one from the remaining forces of the 5 sects and 3 factions objected. Everyone could see that the current result was more advantageous to the 5 sects and 3 factions. Naturally, no one objected. As for the other forces, even if they had objections, they were not qualified to object. After all, the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly was jointly organized by the Sacred Mountain, the 5 sects and 3 factions, and the Heavenly Palace. It was not up to the other forces to speak, and the other forces were not qualified to express their opinions. In that case, the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly will continue. Chapter 804. The Sacred Martial Assembly is continuing. The spectators let out a sigh of relief. The Sacred Martial Assembly was about to continue. If the Heavenly Palace and Sacred Mountain really started fighting, who knew how many people would be affected? The real battle between the top geniuses is about to start. Who will be the real king of geniuses? Many people continued to look forward to it. Compared to the battle between Sacred Mountain and Heavenly Palace, the battle between the geniuses was much more exciting. The Sacred Martial Assembly was also the reason why millions of people gathered in Zhongzhou City. Many people traveled thousands of miles just for this grand event that happened once every 30 years. They want to know who would be the new king of geniuses in the next 30 years. The Sacred Martial Assembly will continue. You can continue to participate, or you can leave early. Of course, if you want to continue, you can do whatever you want. You're a disciple of my Heavenly Palace. Although you haven't officially joined my Heavenly Palace, we won't let anyone bully our disciples. Old Man Guyu looked at Su-yi and then at Nalan Ryu, who was standing on top of a huge golden rock in the distance. He then said in a meaningful tone, following Palace Lord Guyue's gaze, Su-yi also looked at the majestic figure on the huge golden rock. Su-yi understood Elder Guyue's words. The Sacred Martial Assembly would continue. Once he fought against Naran Ryu, she wouldn't hold back. A faint sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. The Holy Mountain's Ice Cauldron wanted the Sacred Martial Assembly to continue. It was likely that he wanted Nalan Ryu to make a move. At that time, when he encountered Nalan Ryu, the other party would not be lenient. But to Sui, how could he hold back? Wasn't this also an opportunity? This was also a true test of his abilities. I'll continue to participate. Thank you, Palace Lord Guyue. Sui understood Palace Lord Guyue's meaning. Palace Lord Guyue was afraid that he would be afraid of Naren Ruyu. If he withdrew, Sacred Mountain wouldn't be able to do anything to him. If he chose to continue to participate, he could also participate. Heavenly Palace would help him to the end. While Sui was grateful for the Imperial Palace's constant help, he also knew that the Imperial Palace was trying to curry favor with him. Although the Imperial Palace had their own goals and wanted his heaven-ranked soul quality and strength, the Imperial Palace was willing to sacrifice everything to protect him. If he reached the peak one day, he would repay the favor of a drop of water with a spring if he had the chance. Not to mention that Heavenly Palace's kindness was far more than a drop of water. All right, then let's continue. The rules of the final battle of the Sacred Martial Assembly are all random. This was set up by the experts of the Sacred Mountain, the 5 sects, 3 factions, and the Imperial Palace. Everything depends on luck. Old Man Guyu looked at Sui and smiled, his eyes filled with admiration. Afterward, Elder Guyue left. Vice Palace Lord Guanlan, Vice Palace Lord Yanlu, and Vice Palace Lord Yunding nodded and returned to the mountain where Heavenly Palace was staying. Be careful, Merciless West whispered in Sui's ear with a serious expression. It's fine. Sui smiled. Merciless West nodded and returned to Heavenly Palace's group with Green Emperor. Bing Fu's expression was gloomy. With a wave of his hand, Sacred Mountain's experts returned to their original mountain, but their cold and sharp gazes were fixed on Sui. Almost all of Sacred Mountain's disciples had died at his hands this time. Many of them were the disciples and grand disciples of Sacred Mountain's experts, and some were even the grandsons of Sacred Mountain's experts. If it weren't for Heavenly Palace's experts, Sui would have been torn to pieces by Sacred Mountain's experts. But with Heavenly Palace's experts present, Sacred Mountain's experts had no choice but to be wary. Seeing that Sacred Mountain and Heavenly Palace's experts had retreated, the experts of the 5 sects and 3 factions all returned to their seats with complicated expressions. It's just a small matter that delayed the Sacred Martial Assembly. Let the Sacred Martial Assembly continue. A figure flew out and appeared in the void. His eyes were bright, and his temperament was dignified. It was Ouyang Yuanfeng. At this moment, Bing Fu didn't seem to be in the mood to host the Sacred Martial Assembly. It was replaced by Ouyang Yuanfeng, the city lord of Zhongzhou City. Ouyang Yuanfeng's voice, which was mixed with Yuan Qi, reverberated in the surroundings. His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for countless figures to hear clearly. This was also a test of strength. Ordinary people couldn't do it. Hearing this, the surrounding mountains gradually calmed down. The Sacred Martial Assembly was finally about to begin again. Buzz! Suddenly, a loud buzzing sound of a bell came from somewhere in the sky. It was deafening. RV! In front of the surrounding mountains, all the noise came to an abrupt stop. It was completely quiet. Ouyang Yuanfeng's eyes were bright as he scanned the surroundings. In front of the mountain range, all the gazes were currently focused on Ouyang Yuanfeng and the 32 golden boulders in the middle of the plaza. Gazing at the 32 people on the golden boulders, countless young people around looked at them with burning desire. These 32 people, to a certain extent, were already famous. They stood out from millions of geniuses and proved their absolute strength. These were the 32 true heaven's prides. Some people were also looking at Ouyang Yuanfeng. It was no exaggeration to say that the lord of Zhongzhou City was a giant. He was the target that everyone wanted to pursue. There were rumors that Ouyang Yuanfeng was one of the 32 heaven's prides in the Sacred Martial Assembly 30 years ago. The Sacred Martial Assembly is held once every 30 years. It is jointly organized by the Sacred Mountain, the 5 sects and 3 factions, and the Imperial Palace. The last 32 people will be able to enter the Sacred Martial stage. At that time, they will be able to enter the Sacred Mountain to cultivate for a period of time. They will also be qualified to participate in the final battle. The final champion will be able to obtain an unexpected benefit. That is, he will have the opportunity to cultivate together with the saints and saintesses of the sacred mountain. Ouyang Yuanfeng's voice was steady. It wasn't loud, but it turned into sound waves that reverberated in the void. You can cultivate on the sacred mountain. Many people trembled, and their eyes were burning. Entering the sacred mountain to cultivate for a period of time, especially the champion. He could actually cultivate together with the saints and saintesses of the sacred mountain. This was an opportunity that everyone dreamed of. In the sacred martial assembly that is held once every 30 years, I now announce. Ouyang Yuanfeng looked around, and just at the right time, he raised his voice and said, "The final battle between the heavens' prides has officially begun." Boom! Within the thousands of mountains, cheers suddenly filled the sky. Waves of sound waves converged and soared into the sky. The final battle is about to begin. I wonder who will be the king of heaven's prides this time. Chapter 805. The final battle should be between Naren Ruyu and the Bawang sect's Yi Su. Many people thought so and believed that the final battle for the title of King of Geniuses would be between the Bawang sect's Yi Su and the Sacred Mountain's Holy Son, Naren Ruyu. Not necessarily. Maybe a dark horse will appear. Everything is still unknown. So people also had reservations. No one could guess the outcome until the end. Just like before the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly, who would have thought that the Bawang sect's Yi Su, an unknown mountain sect disciple, would be so fierce. He killed dozens of disciples of the sacred mountain by himself, and even killed Chu Zhanghuan with such ferocity. If this had happened at the beginning, no one would have believed it if they had not seen it with their own eyes. Feeling the thunderous cheers and expectations around him, Ouyang Yuanfeng waved his hand after a while, and the cheers and expectations gradually subsided. Looking at the 32 young figures on the 32 golden boulders, Ouyang Yuanfeng continued, "The 32 of you are the future hope of the Central State. The next battle will be different from the one in the sacred martial secret world. You will fight alone. You are not allowed to use any external force, including the soul-controlling talisman, the soul-controlling talisman shield, and so on. You are not allowed to kill on purpose. Otherwise, you will be severely punished." His voice resounded and fell into everyone's ears. The last 32 people were the top geniuses of the various mountain sects in the past sacred martial arts assemblies. None of the mountain sects could afford to lose any of them. Therefore, there were strict rules in the final battle. No external force was allowed, such as the soul-controlling talisman, the soul-controlling talisman shield, and so on. No killing was allowed. Su Yi heard this and looked indifferent. It's almost time. There are a total of 5 rounds in the final battle. Everything is random. As for the result, it depends on your strength and luck. When Ouyang Yuanfeng's last word fell, the sonorous sound of a bell once again resounded in the void between heaven and earth. Boom! The 32 golden boulders formed by the 32 sacred martial platforms in the sky seemed to come alive as they rotated. Golden light soared into the sky and filled the air with a divine aura, causing the huge square to rumble and the ground to shake. The 5 sects and 3 factions, the Imperial Palace, the Sacred Mountain, and the other major powers were all looking at the plaza nervously and expectantly. Rumble. The golden light of the plaza illuminated half of the void. The 32 golden boulders rotated, and, as they touched and moved, they turned into 16 gigantic golden boulders. The golden light dissipated, and the aura calmed down. On each of the 16 golden boulders, 2 figures faced each other from afar. Su Yi raised his eyes. There was a figure in front of him that could be considered familiar, but also not unfamiliar. It was precisely Cheng Qingfeng, who had won several consecutive battles on the martial arena in Central Continent City, before being defeated by Su Qian in the end. Su Yi remembered that Merciless West had mentioned that she was a disciple of the Qishan Divine Spear sect. Su Yi did not pay much attention to the opponent in front of him, after which his gaze swept across the surroundings. Everyone had their own opponents and were standing in pairs. Boom! When the golden boulders calmed down, pairs of eyes looked at their opponents, not daring to be careless. However, when some people looked at their opponents, they felt a little afraid for no reason. For example, Naren Ryu's opponent, a yellow-robed youth, had a bitter expression on his face. There was also Chung Ching-fong, who was wild with joy and incomparable joy to be able to enter the top 32. However, when he saw his opponent, he felt like crying but had no tears. Now, I announced the start of the final battle. Ouyang Yuanfeng's gaze swept across the battling figures as he stepped into the void. His voice was vast and mighty, deafening like thunder. Walala, at this moment, the atmosphere in the mountains had reached its peak. Waves of cheers soared into the sky and shook the void. At the same time, on the 16 golden boulders, a vigorous aura had already soared into the sky. Yuan Qi whistled and swept out from the golden boulders like a storm. Bang! Soon, the sound of a sonic boom was heard. Bang! Bang! On the golden boulder, streams of light shot up into the sky. The sound of Yuan Qi colliding could be heard, creating a huge sonic boom. In an instant, the young figures on the golden boulders did not hesitate to exchange blows. Yuan Qi surged, and sonic booms tore through the air. The collision of true geniuses made one's blood boil. The moment they made their moves, they were all extraordinary. Many people directly exchanged blows. In a final battle, whoever wanted to reach the end would have to go through several rounds of tug-of-war. They could only end the battle quickly and defeat their opponents with the least consumption. Otherwise, it would become more and more disadvantageous for them. Therefore, many people did not hold back. Not to mention that it was related to advancing to the next round. The eyes of the entire central state were sizing them up. If they were defeated in the first round, it would undoubtedly seem a little inadequate. No one wanted to be so cowardly. This was a great opportunity to become famous in the world. They had to fight with all their might. Even if some people knew that they might not be a match, they would not shrink back. They would fight with their lives on the line. Su Yi's gaze swept across the battlefield. 32 people, 16 opponents. Gong Qianxing, Mu Yao, Jian Wuk, Xiao Sijun, Feng Qingnong, Qin Yanhuan, and other famous people did not seem to have encountered each other. Su Yi couldn't help but wonder if this duel was based on primordial qi. Su Yi looked around, not even looking at Chung Qingfeng. This made Chung Qingfeng's expression turn even uglier. The eyes of the entire central state were focused on this place. Chung Qingfeng had no other choice. He clenched his teeth and clenched the long spear in his hand. Golden light spread out and rumbled. I know you are very strong, but I asked for a fight. Chung Qingfeng spoke as he gazed at Su Yi. At the same time that he spoke, two strands of golden origin energy that were visible to the eye instantly sprayed out from beneath his feet, and it was like a wisp of a vortex that instantly shot towards Su Yi. His long hair danced in the wind. The long spear was like a golden dragon emerging from the sea. Chung Qingfeng attacked. His aura surged and golden light shone. The aura in his body was completely released. He did not hold back the aura of a level 1 Yuan Jin Realm expert. His entire body exploded with golden light, like a burning golden flame, spreading out in all directions. Buzz! At this moment, the sound of wind and thunder could be faintly heard from the golden long spear. His aura was monstrous. The golden light turned into the shadow of a strange beast and charged towards Su Yi. Chapter 806. The spear was sharp, and its aura was even more terrifying. Su Yi raised his eyes and looked at the long spear. His eyes moved slightly as he silently praised Chung Qingfeng. He was indeed quite talented. Gee, Su Yi moved. He secretly stepped out with the 100 transformation steps and instantly escaped from the golden spear. Chung Qingfeng's expression darkened, but the golden spear in his hand did not slow down. It immediately spun around like a snake swinging its tail, and a golden light erupted from the spear as it pierced towards Su Yi once again. At the same time, Su he stretched out his hand and clawed out. Scarlet light surged, and in the most barbaric and powerful way, he directly grabbed the golden spear with one hand. Chi! In an instant, the former golden spear could no longer move an inch in Su Yi's hand. A powerful wave of vitality poured into the golden spear, and the spear trembled, emitting a sound. It was as if it was about to break. Thud, thud. A terrifying force immediately caused Cheng Qingfeng's palm to feel intense pain. Blood flowed from the web between his thumb and index finger as he staggered back. He also spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face instantly turned deathly pale. The sound of the golden spear trembled incessantly. Wrapped in a scarlet light, it was like lightning, like a flood dragon swinging its tail. With a wisp of scarlet light, it was like a scarlet lightning bolt, instantly pointing towards the center of Cheng Qingfeng's brows. The sharp chi seemed to want to pierce through the spatial ripples, and the whistling sound of the wind breaking was terrifying. In an instant, it expanded in Cheng Qingfeng's eyes and then pointed at the center of his brows. An aura of death spread out from the depths of his soul, and he could not help but tremble all over. Then, the tip of the spear stopped in front of Cheng Qingfeng's forehead, and the sharp chi instantly retracted. Da/Yuancheng Qingfeng raised his eyes. Under his shocked gaze, the former's face appeared in front of him. For some reason, there was a domineering and destructive aura, causing him to stand in front of him, but for some reason, he felt afraid. "You've lost," Sui spoke. The golden spear in his hand that he had forcefully snatched shook, and then he threw it back to Cheng Qingfeng. Cheng Qingfeng was stunned. He subconsciously caught the golden spear, and his gaze was still somewhat sluggish. The spirit weapon that he had recognized as his master was actually in the hands of the former, and it was directly suppressed. Just now, when the other party wanted to kill him, he could not withstand a single blow. Looking at the young man in front of him, Cheng Qingfeng finally understood why Chu Zhonghuan was killed. It was definitely not a coincidence. The strength of the young man in front of him was too terrifying. He was a monstrous fellow. "Thank you." Cheng Qingfeng cupped his fists and bowed to Su Yi. Su Yi had been so fierce to the disciples of the Holy Mountain, but he had held back on purpose just now. He had only let Cheng Qingfeng know that he was in trouble and did not even hurt him. Cheng Qingfeng was grateful for that. As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Qingfeng put away the golden spear in his hand and directly jumped off the golden boulder. He was no match for him at all. Although he was defeated in one move, he did not feel ashamed. Bang! In the distance, a muffled explosion sounded, and a figure flew down from the golden boulder, vomiting blood. Su Yi looked over and saw that it was Nalan Ruyu's opponent. He couldn't even withstand a single blow and was sent flying. He didn't even have the strength to resist. After defeating her opponent, Nalan Ruyu's eyes immediately landed on Su Yi's body through the huge golden boulder. Her eyes were sparkling. Su Yi smiled coldly and did not take it to heart. His gaze continued to sweep across the surroundings. There were still 14 golden boulders in the midst of an intense battle. As expected of the peak of the younger generation who had stepped into the final battle, every single one of them was extraordinary. Oh, some people's vital chi took form. Phantoms of ferocious birds spread their wings, and ferocious beasts roared. There were also extraordinary spirit weapons. Sabers, spears, swords, and halberds flew. The surroundings were in an uproar. Many of the spectators felt their blood boil, especially some young people. They raised their arms and shouted. Their voices soared into the sky, and their eyes burned with yearning. Su Yi narrowed his eyes. He could see that many people had used their full strength and were fighting with their lives on the line. However, there were also some people who did not hold back. They did not use their full strength either. Jian Wuk, Gong Qianxing, Xiao Xijun, Mu Yao, Feng Qingnong, and the other top seeds of the 5 sects and 3 factions were obviously holding back. This round would end soon. Su Chun and Yin Lin were on their respective golden boulders. Su Yi was more concerned. Su Chen's opponent was a youth in white. He was also quite handsome. However, when he stood next to Su Chun, his brilliance was overshadowed. The strength of the youth in white was also extraordinary. He had some impression of him. He seemed to be a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect. The youth in white was extraordinary. His aura was ferocious. He was at the peak of the 9th level of Origin Spirit Realm, almost half a step into the Yuanjin realm. Coupled with the various techniques of the Blue Cloud sect and extraordinary weapons, he would definitely have the strength to fight against a true first-level Yuanjin realm expert. However, the youth in white was up against Su Chen. He only needed to take 2 glances to know the outcome. The youth in white was a disciple of the Blue Cloud sect. He had a deep foundation and should have some trump cards. However, Su Chen was even more unfathomable. Furthermore, with Su Yi's understanding of Su Chen, the youth in white from the Blue Cloud sect was probably not Su Chen's match. Su Chen was probably still holding back. Otherwise, the youth in white would have been defeated long ago. It was Yin Lin who surprised Su Yi more and more. At this moment, Yin Lin was facing a girl in tight clothes. Her figure was graceful and curvaceous. The cleavage in front of her chest was especially visible. It was incomparably alluring. Her long black hair was slightly messy, which added to her charm. However, Yin Lin did not seem to take another look at this girl. The black scales on his body opened and emitted light. A ferocious aura erupted as he continuously clashed with the treasured sword in the girl's hand with his bare hands. The sound of metal clashing rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. However, he was not at a disadvantage. This girl's strength was definitely powerful. Compared to the youth in white from the Blue Cloud sect that Su Chen was facing, she was definitely not inferior. However, the more Yin Lin fought, the more ferocious he became. He was fearless. The black scales on his body were indestructible and were his best defense and weapon. Strange. The more Su Yi paid attention, the more surprised he was. Yin Lin seemed to still be holding back. All of his attacks were using brute force. He used pure strength to break through all techniques without using any martial skills. Even so, the girl in tight clothes could not gain the upper hand. She had endless trump cards and was still suppressed by Yin Lin. As Su Yi expected, this round of matches ended very quickly. The battles on the golden boulders were constantly ending. Mu Yao, Jin Wuk, Gong Qinxing, Shaoxi Lord, Feng Qingnong, and the others had all defeated their opponents. Roar! The youth in white from the Blue Cloud sect transformed his Yuan Qi into a white flood dragon. He was already using his full strength. His expression was extremely grave. Boom! Chapter 807. The white-clothed youth's expression changed drastically as he rapidly retreated. A Yuan Qi light barrier covered his body as he used all his skills to narrowly avoid the attack. Qi La. However, the sharp wind from the claw brushed past his neck, causing a piercing pain on his skin. A few strands of his hair were shattered and several bloody scars appeared on the skin of his neck as fresh blood flowed out. You have lost. Just when the white-robed young man thought he had dodged another attack, a faint voice rang in his ears. The claw imprint spun around in an inconceivable manner and suddenly pressed down. With a white cloud-like light, it was as if a dragon's claw had spun around and clasped onto the young man's shoulder. Qi La. As the claw landed, an extremely ferocious force pressed down. A huge force entered the white-clothed youth's body, causing half of his body to turn limp. His shoulder emitted a cracking sound as fresh blood flowed out. The Yuan Qi within his body had been sealed. Bang! The white-clothed youth was thrown off the giant golden rock. Before he could recover his senses, he had already smashed onto the ground. Defeated, an elder from the Blue Cloud sect had a solemn expression as he tightly clenched his fists. His expression was ugly. A key disciple of the sect had actually been defeated by an unknown wandering cultivator. With their eyesight, they could naturally tell that the other party had not used his full strength. It could be said that their sect's disciple had lost miserably. That Su Chen is unfathomable. He is a dark horse. Elder Su Yun's expression was calm as she curiously sized up Su Chen. Bang! Clang! A muffled sound rang out as energy collided. Yin Lin's fist was covered in black scales as it directly knocked the sword out of the hand of the graceful woman. The woman's expression changed drastically. Just as she was about to react, Yin Lin had already appeared beside her. His fist suddenly turned into a palm as black light fluctuated. A terrifying wind attacked, and a humming sound was emitted from the air as his palm ruthlessly slammed over. The eyes of the tight-fitting clothed lady were solemn. The yuan power under her feet surged, and her graceful body immediately twisted in a strange, yet even more exquisite manner, narrowly dodging Yin Lin's palm. "I can't dodge it." It was also at this moment that Yin Lin opened his mouth. His arm suddenly shook, and the palm print that was dodged was like a spirit snake as it drew an extremely unimaginable arc in the air. It actually made half a circle. His arm seemed to have suddenly turned into something and directly patted the shoulder of the tight-fitting clothed lady. Bang! The woman spat out a large mouthful of blood, and her delicate body was sent flying, crashing heavily into the distance. Many people were staring at the battle between Yin Lin and the girl. Yin Lin's strange attack just now had caused many people to be astonished. What kind of technique was that? His arm was actually able to bend as it lengthened. This was too strange. That's a half-demon body. It might be his innate talent. Among the onlookers, there were some experts who saw some clues. That ugly young man had the body of a half-demon, half-human, half-beast. This strange technique might have come from the demon race. Half-human, half-beast can also participate in the sacred martial assembly. A young disciple was astonished. Half-human, half-beast, born from a union of demon race and human race, was not tolerated by both demon race and human race. The union between demon race and human race is forbidden. However, after a long time, both the human race and demon race have already gotten used to it. Although it's forbidden, they have already turned a blind eye to it. Some large sects even have some valiant experts with half-demon bodies. Someone told the juniors around him that although the union between the demon clan and the human clan was taboo, both the human clan and the demon clan had become accustomed to this phenomenon after a long time. Although it was still forbidden, they turned a blind eye to it. Many large sects had valiant experts with half-demon bodies. However, those half-human, half-beast creatures usually had a miserable ending. This little guy is very strong. Seeing that Yin Lin had won, Su Yi's eyes moved. He did not expect Yin Lin to be so valiant. Indeed, one cannot judge a book by its cover. Very quickly, this round of battle ended. Under the soaring cheers, there were only 16 figures left on the 16 gigantic golden boulders. So powerful, countless spectators were in an uproar. Look at Z#K. Version chapter. Yuan square root /FPN. These 16 people were already destined to become famous in the central continent. Their futures were limitless. They were the geniuses of the 16 heavenly geniuses. Su Yi sized up the crowd. The remaining 16 people were roughly the same as he had expected. Holy Mountains Naren Ryu, Skyblaze Sex Qi Tian Xian, Profound Sky Sex Gong Qian Xing, Blue Cloud Sex Li Qingwei, Three Origin Sex Feng Qingnom, Distinct Void Sex Lin Fan, Clear Sky Sex Chen Yanhuan, Beast Emperor Sex Young Master Jun, Xinjian Gates Mu Yao, Jin Wuk, and the young leader of the Imperial Heavenly Palace. Adding himself, Su Chun, Yin Lin, and two other young men, one with a robust physique and the emblem of the Beast Emperor sect on his shoulder. The last young man looked the most mature and seemed to be the oldest. However, his temperament was not ordinary. He was a disciple of the Clear Sky sect. In the various groups, some of the elders and experts were overjoyed, while others were disappointed. 16 people had entered this round. According to reason, all the disciples of the Holy Mountain had perished this time, and only Nalen Ryu was left. Among the 5 sects and 3 groups, they should at least be in the top 16. Each mountain sect should have at least 2 people entering this round. But now, only the Xinjian Gate, Clear Sky sect, and Beast Emperor sect had 2 people in the top 16. There were a few rogue cultivators in the top 16. At this moment, the elders of the Xinjiang Gate, Clear Sky Sect, and Beast Emperor Sect were all smiling. They had obtained 2 spots in the top 16, surpassing the other sections. The eyes of Sacred Mountain's group were filled with cold intent, especially when they saw that Su Chun and Yin Lin had also entered the top 16. This made Sacred Mountain's expression turn even uglier. Buzz! The sound of a bell reverberated in the air. Congratulations on entering the next round. The rules are still the same. You can't kill on purpose. You can't use any external force other than the soul-controlling talisman. Your opponents will depend on your luck. Ouyang Yuanfeng stepped into the air and glanced at Su Yi, Su Chun, and Yin Lin with a complicated look in his eyes. Boom! As soon as Ouyang Yuanfeng finished speaking, the 16 golden boulders in the square trembled once again. Golden light burst out and holy chi enveloped them. It was as if they were alive as they spun around. Rumble, rumble. The ground trembled and the void rumbled. Golden light shot up into the sky. They're about to enter the top 8. It's getting more and more intense. This is the battle of heavenly geniuses. Everyone is a genius. Chapter 808. 16 golden boulders came into contact with each other and converged into 8 even larger golden boulders that towered over the vast plaza. Atop the golden boulder, Su Yi raised his brow slightly as he looked at the figure in front of him. At this moment, facing Su Yi was a young woman with a charming face. Under her long, curved eyelashes, her eyes were large and bright, and her strange pupils had a faint golden hue to them, adding to her charm. The woman was dressed in tight clothes, outlining her slender and straight legs. The curves of her body were incomparably captivating, and she exuded a bright and youthful aura, making her even more alluring. Su Yi had seen this woman before and had even interacted with her before. During the treasure hunt in the canyon, she was Clear Sky Sect's Chen Yinhuan. Su Yi had seen many beautiful women in his life, but when he saw such a beautiful woman, he couldn't help but take a second look at her. Without a doubt, Chen Yinhuan wasn't inferior to Mu Yao or Shangwan Shiwei, and her attire was even more provocative. Her skin was the color of wheat, and her small and straight nose gave her a wild and valiant temperament. Looking at the opponent in front of her, Chen Yinhuan's brow furrowed slightly. Chen Yinhuan had been thinking that as long as she didn't encounter Naren Ruyu in this round, she should have a chance of entering the top 8. But she hadn't thought that although she didn't encounter Naren Ruyu, she would have forgotten about this terrifying girl's existence for a while. There seemed to be no difference between encountering this guy and encountering Naren Ruyu. Looking at his opponent, Su Yi knew that Clear Sky Sect's Chen Yinhuan was definitely strong, but there was a limit to her strength. Sweeping his gaze around, Su Yi was quite curious about the other's opponents. Immediately, Su Yi saw that among the 8 pairs, Su Chun was up against Heavenly Profound Sect's Gong Qian Xing. Yin Lin encountered Distinct Void Sect's Lin Feng. Li Qingwei encountered another young man from Clear Sky Sect, and Mu Yao encountered another outstanding disciple from Beast Emperor Sect. However, Xiao Sijun was up against 3 Yuan schools Feng Qing Nong, while Jian Wuk was up against that disciple from Heavenly Dry Palace. Su Yi's gaze finally landed on Naren Ruyu. Opposite Naren Ruyu was Qi Tianxian of the Skyblaze sect. 16 people faced each other on 8 golden boulders. The gazes of countless onlookers surged with blazing passion, and their hearts could not help but boil. However, to the people from the various major forces, some of them were filled with anticipation and nervousness. There were also experts from the 2 mountain sects who had grim looks on their faces. The elders and masters of Clear Sky Sect and Skyblaze Sect all looked a little unhappy at this moment. Qi Tianxuan's encounter with Naren Ruyu made the Skyblaze Sect's experts feel helpless, no matter how confident they were in Qi Tianxian. Naren Ruyu was the holy son of the Holy Mountain. The Clear Sky Sect's experts looked at Su Yi with distressed expressions. They naturally had confidence in Chen Yinhuan. For this sacred martial assembly, Clear Sky Sect had poured a lot of effort into her. Chen Yinhuan had not disappointed Clear Sky Sect's experts. Her talent was extraordinary, and she had made great strides all the way, guiding the entire younger generation of Clear Sky sect. At this moment, these Clear Sky sect's experts were even more aware that Chun Yinhuan had not used her true strength yet. She had been holding back, waiting for the most critical moment to bloom with the most dazzling light. Originally, if any of them encountered a rogue, cultivator, or a dark horse from a small mountain sect in this round of 16, everyone would be overjoyed. But now, the Clear Sky sect's experts were not happy. The Bawang sect's name was unknown, and this Isu was indeed a dark horse, but this dark horse was too dark. Even Holy Mountain's Chu Zhanghuan could not withstand a single blow from him. Was this still a dark horse? This was a dark horse. On the 8 golden boulders, auras fluctuated, dazzling everyone's eyes. At this moment, those who were able to reach this step were all extremely talented. None of them were weak. They were all dragons and phoenixes among men. Such a showdown caused countless eyes to burn with excitement. Whoa! The sound of a bell resounded, sonorous and deafening. Walala! The liveliness of the surrounding mountains and peaks of the entire square also rose to another level, setting off a huge wave. You seem to have a close relationship with that little brat. Then let's start with you. Gong Qianxing stared at Su Chun, his eyes slightly moved. He could see that Su Chun seemed to have a close relationship with Yi Su. This might be the will of the heavens. Whoosh! In a tense atmosphere, Gong Qianxing directly attacked. He wanted to end the battle quickly. By finishing off his opponent first, not only could he preserve his strength, but he could also gain more time to breathe. In an instant, Yuan Qi gushed out from the soles of his feet. Gong Qianxing's figure had already shot out like a bolt of lightning. He stretched out his arm, his 5 fingers slightly curled, and a claw seal accompanied by a green light broke through the air and directly grabbed at Su Chun with a strange and cunning move. Heavenly Profound Sect? I've heard of it. Su Chun raised his eyes slightly. At the same time, the Yuan Qi under his feet fluctuated, turning into a vortex of air. Then, his white figure blurred. Qila! Gong Qianxing's speed was very fast, and his expression was cold. He had already rushed forward, and the strange cyan claw mark in his hand fell on Su Chen's chest. With a burst of wind, the cyan claw mark directly penetrated Su Chen's chest. Qila! But where the claw mark passed, no blood spurted out. Instead, Su Chen's figure was completely shattered by the claw mark, turning into ripples in the air. What's wrong with playing with claw marks? I could do it too. Suddenly, Su Chen's voice had already spread out beside him. At the same time, the elegant figure in white appeared. A stream of air violently rotated in his hand, like a mist. The claw mark was like a dragon's claw, instantly sweeping towards Gong Qianxing wherever the claw mark passed. Light filled the air, and the Yuan Qi roared like a tornado. Starting from the golden boulder, it formed a vortex that swept out, instantly crushing towards Gong Qianxing. In a panic, Gong Qianxing was worthy of being the strongest of the younger generation of the Heavenly Profound Sect. In a slight panic, he quickly formed a handprint and pushed out a palm print. The strange cyan light whistled, and the palm print turned into several vine-like cyan ribbons. The light of the wood attribute Yuan Qi surged and spread, entangling Su Chen's claw mark. In an instant, the two forces suddenly collided, and the cyan light and white light burst out. The wind whistled, and the storm surged. Then an explosion burst out when the two collided. Chapter Q of JXINL. B+B/M, ding ding. Before the strength had completely dissipated, Gong Qianxing's body had already staggered back dozens of steps. His face was pale, and there was a muffled groan from his throat. Dang! Chapter 809. Elder Jin Wanyin and the others from the Heavenly Profound Sect were all watching the battle between Gong Qianxing and Su Chun. When they saw Gong Qianxing being pushed back and falling into a disadvantageous position, their expressions immediately turned ugly. Boom! A blazing aura shot up into the sky. At this moment, Qi Tianxian made his move. Qi Tianquan's expression was solemn as he formed a strange hand seal. His aura unreservedly swept out from his body. The blazing aura instantly shot up into the sky. Rumble, blazing heat soared into the sky, bringing with it a scorching aura. Faint clanging sounds could be heard as it rumbled. Qi Tianxian has actually reached the peak of the second level of Yuan Zhen realm. He's really strong. Qi Tianxian is not simple to be able to gather such momentum with pure Yuan Qi. Qi Tianquan's aura at this moment attracted the attention of the experts from all over the place. The experts from the various major forces were also impressed. There was no doubt that Qi Tianxian was very strong. He was so strong that even these experts had to look at him with new eyes. The experts from the Skyblaze sect were also very satisfied with Qi Tianquan's strength. The Skyblaze sect had invested a lot of effort in Qi Tianxian. They originally thought that Qi Tianxian had the strength to enter the top 4, but unfortunately, he met Naren Ruyu in advance. Walala, the blazing aura fluctuated as Qi Tianquan's hand seals continued to condense. The blazing aura enveloped his body and the golden boulder. Then, it turned into a sea of fire that blotted out the sky. As the blazing aura surged, Qi Tianquan's figure grew larger and larger. He slowly emerged from the sea of fire and was covered in a set of flaming armor. The runes on the armor flowed like flowing lava. There seemed to be a faint shadow of a fire wolf floating on the armor. It was extraordinary, and a powerful aura spread out. Flaming wolf armor. When they saw Qi Tianquan's movements, many people were shocked. I didn't expect Qi Tianxian to have reached this stage and obtained the flaming wolf armor of the Skyblaze sect. Some of the experts from the 5 sects and 3 factions gasped in astonishment. The flaming wolf armor really came prepared. In Shunjian Gate, the Saruga elder also whispered, and his eyes moved slightly. What a powerful armor! Su Yi's gaze was also attracted to Qi Tianxian. He could feel an extremely powerful aura from the armor on Qi Tianxian's body through the void. It exuded an impressive pressure. That aura made one's skin burn and their hair stand on end even though they were far away in the void. Soon, Qi Tianquan's body grew larger and larger under the cover of the flaming wolf battle armor. He was several meters tall, standing in front of Naren Ruyu. It was like an elephant facing an ant. "Fight!" Qi Tianxian shouted in a low voice. A huge fiery silhouette instantly stepped out. The shadow of the fiery wolf on his armor seemed to have come alive. Qi Tianxian moved his arms, and waves of fire surged. Qi Tianxian attacked. Waves of blazing aura penetrated the space, and there was a whistling sound of wind breaking. With a violent power, waves of fire swept towards Naren Ruyu. "It's barely enough. Then I'll play with you." Looking at the blazing attack, Naren Ruyu raised her eyes slightly. However, she was not nervous at all. Instead, the corners of her mouth curled into a playful smile. Boom! A monstrous blazing aura fluctuated, shaking the space and causing the airflow to fluctuate. An aura that seemed capable of burning everything swept out. Just as it was about to engulf Naren Ruyu, a dazzling light suddenly shot out from Naren Ruyu's body as a divine aura descended. In an instant, Naren Ruyu's figure rose into the air. Vitality wings condensed behind her back, and a palm print was formed. The light condensed on the palm of her right hand. Everything happened very quickly. Naren Ruyu's speed had reached an absolutely terrifying level. Qi Tianxian raised his head in surprise. When he looked at the former with a gaze that seemed to contain a sea of fire, Naren Ruyu's figure had already appeared above his huge figure. The surrounding sea of fire and blazing aura seemed to have no effect on her at all. Rumble, a sound like a heavenly drum, sonorous and deafening, faintly came from Naren Ruyu's palm. At the same time, Naren Ruyu's palm became crystal clear. A monstrous pressure spread from it, and the divine aura was endless. Sacred Hand, Heaven-Shaking Seal. When such a seal appeared from Naren Ruyu's hand, the expressions of the experts in the Skyblaze sect changed instantly. At this moment, the The one whose expression changed the most was Qi Tianxian. He felt a huge divine aura. Under the terrifying aura, his body could not help but tremble. He was subconsciously suppressed. A wolf. From the flaming wolf armor, a fire wolf rushed out like a living creature and swept out. Bang! The two collided, and light filled the sky. Waves of fire surged and spread in all directions. Countless eyes were filled with shock. The huge fire wolf shattered inch by inch and was defeated with irresistible force. Ding dang! Qi Tianxuan's huge body retreated continuously, and the flame aura on his body gradually dimmed. Make your move. A crisp and pleasant voice came into Su Yi's ears. Chen Yanhuan looked at Su Yi, her red lips slightly parted. Under her tight clothes, her slender and straight legs were outlined. Su Yi retracted his gaze and looked at Chen Yanhuan with a smile. He had seen this woman's strength when they were fighting for treasures in the canyon. She was indeed not weak. You make your move first, Su Yi replied. I know you are strong, but if you want to defeat me, I'm afraid it won't be easy. I advise you not to be careless. Looking at Su Yi's seemingly indifferent expression, Chen Yanhuan frowned slightly. She was a little unhappy. This guy did not seem to take her seriously at all. Thank you. Su Yi nodded and smiled. Qi. However, before Su Yi could finish his words, the graceful figure in front of him had already arrived in front of him like lightning. The 10 slender fingers of her right hand were holding 2 short blades in each hand. The short blades were slightly curved, overflowing with light and emitting a pressure. Chen Yanhuan's arm suddenly shook, and the pair of short curved blades drew a strange arc. One blade pierced towards Su Yi's chest, while the other blade circled around Su Yi's neck. As expected, women are fickle. Su Yi was stunned for a moment, but his expression did not change. He directly retreated, and at the same time, a black treasured sword appeared in his hand. It was suffused with black light. His wrist slightly bent and quickly slashed out, turning into a sword shadow that blocked in front of him. Clank! Sparks flew, and the golden spears clashed. The sword shadow was dazzling. The sword in Su Yi's hand was Mo Beiming's sword, which blocked Chen Yanhuan's 2 blades. As the golden spears clashed, Su Yi's reaction speed caused Chen Yanhuan's expression to darken. Her eyebrows twitched, and her arm quickly shook. Her body tilted to the side, and the originally graceful curve of her body became even more enchanting. Her hair danced, and the pair of curved blades in Chen Yanhuan's hand spun once again. Both of her hands shot out, and countless blade shadows pierced out. Chapter 810. Su Yi was moved. Chen Yanhuan's offensive was not ordinary. Whether it was her movement technique or her saber skill, her coordination was flawless. Furthermore, her reaction was extremely agile. It was absolutely impossible for someone who had not experienced hundreds of battles to display such an offensive. Coupled with Chen Yanhuan's strength, although she seemed to be holding back, Su Yi already had a rough idea. Although he did not know if she could reach Chu Zhanghuan's level, she was definitely far above Ouyang Jinwei. However, in the face of Chen Yanhuan's fierce offensive, Su Yi did not panic, nor was he careless. Although he was confident that he could suppress Chen Yanhuan, Su Yi still understood that caution was the parent of safety. Even if he hunted eagles all year round, he could still be pecked by chickens. Chila! Su Yi's feet flickered with light as he moved. At this moment, with people familiar with the Shenzhen Gate present, Su Yi did not dare to use the Fuyao's 100 transformation steps too much, lest his identity be exposed. Therefore, Su Yi was using a movement technique from the Heavenly Fei Ancient Sutra. He took a strange trajectory as he brandished the black sword in his hand. Sword flashes flashed out, fending off the illusory saber flashes as sparks constantly emanated from them. In order to not expose his identity, Su Yi's movements seemed to be more restrained. Even in terms of speed, although this movement technique from the Heavenly Fei ancient scripture was definitely not much weaker than the Fuyao's 100 transformation steps, Su Yi only knew about it. At this moment, it could be considered as a last-minute effort. Naturally, it was not as smooth as the Fuyao's Hunter transformation steps, and his speed was greatly affected. In terms of offense, in order to not expose his identity, he had to be even more careful. He fought with brute force and instinctive reaction. This was fine against ordinary people, but against a top genius like Chun Yinhuan of Clear Sky Sect, it was inevitable that she would take advantage of him. Fortunately, Su Yi's years of tempering had already forged his extraordinary agility and reaction. Coupled with the support of his Yuan Qi, even without using any martial skills, his every move was astonishing. There seems to be hope. In Clear Sky Sect's lineup, all the elders and masters who were originally wearing solemn expressions secretly relaxed after watching the battle between Su Yi and Chen Yinhuan. Looking at the situation of the battle, it seemed that the Boang sect's Yi Su was affected in some way, but he did not suppress Chen Yinhuan by much. If Chen Yinhuan used her trump card, she might still have a chance. Good luck. Gong Qian Xing, go for it. Good luck, young master. Feng Qing No, I like you. You must win. Lin Fan, you're so handsome. You can definitely win. Within the mountain range, shouts shot straight into the clouds. When they gathered together, it was like endless thunder, rising and falling one after another. Accompanied by the sound of energy colliding in the field, the void shook. Some of the bolder girls even had their eyes shining brightly towards Lin Fan and Feng Qing No, who were both heaven-defying and incomparably handsome geniuses. They raised their arms and cheered. Who was the one fighting with Gong Qianxing? So cool. He's even more handsome than Lin Fan and Feng Qing No. That's a real handsome man. He's a rogue cultivator called Su Chun. Su Chun, wow, so cool. Even his name sounds good. Many girls noticed Su Chun and were stunned. That's a real handsome man. Dang dang. Oh woo. Bang bang. The 8 figures in the field were all extremely powerful. The ear-piercing sound of metal clashing and the thunderous roars of beasts could be heard. Chen Yinhuan frowned as the battle went on. She did not know why, but her opponents seemed to be unable to suppress her. But the more they fought, the stronger he became. Gradually, there were signs of him suppressing her. Whoosh! Her graceful figure flickered. Chen Yinhuan's delicate body suddenly turned into a particularly beautiful arc, and the light in her eyes also became brighter. Xiao. The pair of short blades in Chen Yinhuan's hands pierced out explosively. Many illusory blade lights fluctuated and then instantly merged together, turning into 2 materialized blade lights that directly pierced towards the 2 sides of Su Yi's chest. Dang! The crisp sound of metal clashing resounded. Black sword light flashed, and a black sword that was emitting a deep black light appeared in front of Su Yi, blocking the 2 solid daggers. As the metal clashed, sparks filled the air, and a powerful gust of wind swept out. The solid daggers shattered inch by inch, and the 2 daggers were revealed. The tips of the daggers shone with a cold light as they collided with the black sword. A terrifying force suddenly surged out, and from the tip of the daggers, it was as if lightning was spreading out. Dang! Su Yi's footsteps staggered as he took a step back. His body abruptly stopped. Su Yi felt the sharp force gushing out from the 2 short swords. The light in his eyes flickered, and the vigorous Yuan Qi in his meridians surged out and directly poured into the black treasured sword. As Su Yi's Yuan Qi poured in, the deep black light in the black sword suddenly became brighter. A terrifying force surged out and rushed into the 2 daggers in the simplest and most direct way. Buzz buzz! With such a violent influx of Yuan Qi, the 2 daggers instantly trembled. The tip of the daggers trembled, and there were signs that the daggers were about to break. It was as if cracks had appeared. At this moment, Chen Yinhuan's expression changed drastically, following which a huge force rebounded and her body was blown away. Chi. Chen Yinhuan's straight and slender legs rubbed against the golden boulder as she was blown back several feet. Only then did she manage to stabilize her delicate body. As Chen Yinhuan's expression changed, he stared at the pair of scimitars in his hands. Even though the tips of the scimitars were not damaged, he knew that they were Tao artifacts. If they were spirit armaments, they would have been shattered, but the person in front of him was so ferocious. Chen Yanhuan's eyes flickered. She knew clearly in her heart how powerful the former's force was. It had shaken her to the point that her qi and blood were surging. The yuan qi that surged in her body through the daggers was overbearing and destructive. It caused the yuan qi in her body to be blocked, and even her soul was trembling. It was too shocking for her. It was simply inconceivable. Su Yi had the advantage, but he did not take advantage of the situation to pursue. Instead, he looked at Chen Yanhuan and examined his own shortcomings and weaknesses. Although he had the upper hand, Su Yi knew in his heart that he was purely relying on his yuan qi to forcefully counterattack. After losing the means that he was good at, his hands and feet were tied. Without the support of martial techniques, his fighting strength would be greatly reduced. Our genuine version, initials C here, Akin. At this moment, Su Yi suddenly fell into a state of deep thought. He seemed to have comprehended something. Chapter 811. Chen Yanhuan's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. The faint golden light that added to the charm in her strange eyes suddenly began to ripple and emit a dazzling light. Boom! At that instant, a powerful aura that was not held back at all surged out from Chen Yanhuan's body and spread out. Yuan Qi swept out like a storm. The light was dazzling, and an extremely masculine aura spread out in all directions. Peak second layer, Yuan Jun realm. When such an aura spread out from Chen Yanhuan's body, the faces of many masters in the various great forces changed. This Chen Yanhuan doesn't seem very old. Not even 20 yet, but she has already reached such a cultivation. Some people were shocked. The elders and experts of the major forces all had sharp eyes. Although Qi Tianxian was also at the peak of the second level of Yuan Jun realm, he seemed to be older than Chen Yanhuan. Chen Yanhuan was not even 20 years old yet. If he had a few more years, Chen Yanhuan would not be as strong as he was now. Extraordinary! In Shunjian Gate, many masters and several elders were also surprised. Qi Tianxian was already powerful enough. He was a peerless genius with outstanding talent. However, for a peak second-layer Yuan Jun realm martial artist under the age of 20, in terms of talent, Chen Yanhuan was already superior to Qi Tianxian. Sensing the reactions of all sides, the masters and elders of Clear Sky sect couldn't help secretly smiling. Although Chen Yanhuan was not very old, her talent and strength already surpassed others. If the Sacred Martial Assembly was held 3 or 4 years later, the masters of Clear Sky sect were confident that Chen Yanhuan would at least be able to enter the top 2. Clear Sky sect's elders and masters were well aware of how terrifying Chen Yanhuan's talent was. Chen Yanhuan was known as a rare genius of Clear Sky sect that only appeared once every 1,000 years. In order to avoid attracting too much attention in the Sacred Martial Assembly, Clear Sky sect had concealed Chen Yanhuan's talent from the beginning and did not reveal too much. Rumble. The aura of extreme yang surged while strong winds blew, and it was sonorous and deafening. Such shocking movements drew the countless gazes of the surrounding mountains and peaks. Wrapped in yuan power, Chen Yanhuan's beautiful body seemed to be covered by a layer of solid crystals. Light flickered and her hair danced in the wind. The aura from her body was at the peak of level 2 Yuan Jin stage, and faintly, it seemed like she was about to step into level 3 Yuan Jin stage. Such a powerful aura caused the expressions of everyone around to change. Many surprised gazes were focused on it. It seems like he's using some kind of technique. His aura is still rising, and he's almost at the 3rd level of Yuan Jun stage now. An expert muttered, seeing some clues. It's the pure Yang true essence art. This woman has an extremely pure Yang physique and cultivates the pure Yang true essence art. It seems she's already being cultivated as the next sect master of Clear Sky sect. In the Divine Sword sect, at this moment, even Elder Su Kuanga was moved. The pure yang true essence art was clear sky, sect's secret art, and only the sect master could cultivate it. Since Chun Yinhuan cultivated the pure yang true essence art, there was no doubt that she was being cultivated as the next sect master of Clear Sky Sect. It's the pure yang true essence art. Hearing this, several elders and experts in Xinjiang Gate were moved. They had naturally heard of the pure yang true essence art. It was Clear Sky Sect's secret art, and its power was endless. This woman's talent is amazing. If they were the same age, feeling the aura from Chun Yinhuan, the experts from the 5 sects, 3 factions, and even the Yutian Palace and the Sacred Mountain were all shocked. The gazes of the experts from the various sects had different degrees of complexity, but they were all equally shocked. Such a shocking scene. But Su Yi, who was the closest to it, was still indifferent, as if he had completely lost his mind. But all this fell into Chun Yinhuan's eyes. At first, she thought that Su Yi had lost his mind, but now she was sure that the guy in front of her did not put her in his eyes. It was as if he had never looked at her from beginning to end. Oomph. With a deep snort from her throat, Chun Yinhuan formed a hand seal and waved the pair of daggers in her hands, producing a buzzing sound. The runes on the daggers seemed to be flowing, and then the 2 daggers merged. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, the pair of daggers completely overlapped. The buzzing sound did not stop, and then it strangely expanded by more than a few times. Its power was even stronger, and it emitted a dazzling light. Chun Yinhuan made her move. Her graceful figure was wrapped in vital qi, and she seemed to have leaped into the air for a short period of time. The curved daggers in her hands exploded with a terrifying power, and it seemed to have formed some kind of resonance with the heaven and earth. The void rumbled endlessly, and the wind and thunder roared. This was the power of a Tao artifact, surpassing a spiritual weapon. Spiritual weapons had spirits, but it was rumored that Tao artifacts already had intelligence. Spiritual weapons could be used forcefully, but Tao artifacts could not. One needed to be recognized by the Tao artifact, and only after it recognized its owner could it be used. It was even rumored that Tao artifacts could be used according to their owner's thoughts. Tao artifacts were priceless treasures. For many people, they would not be able to obtain a Tao artifact, even if they spent their entire lives. And there were very few blacksmiths who could forge Tao artifacts in this world. Swoosh! Without any delay, Chun Yinhuan moved with all her might, unleashing the power of the Tao artifact, and slashed her daggers towards Su Yi. Look at the wide X #K on Pizheng equals version in Chapter D. In an instant, the dagger light was like a thunderbolt, and it turned into a bright rainbow. Wherever the dagger light passed, the void trembled, and the surroundings were accompanied by lightning and shadows of strange beasts. It was a terrifying scene. This was Chun Yinhuan's all-out attack. She did not hold back, and it was also her trump card. So powerful. The surrounding experts could not help but nod their heads in astonishment. Chun Yinhuan's attack, coupled with the power of the Tao artifact, was enough to kill an ordinary level 3 Yuan Jin realm expert, even though she had not truly stepped into the level 3 Yuan Jin realm. It was killing, not fighting. Such power was too terrifying. Peerless talent. In the future, this girl will become a terrifying young expert of Clear Sky Sect. Clear Sky Sect is fortunate. Many of the elders and experts of the large mountain sects had complicated expressions. Chun Yinhuan was not even 20 years old, but her strength and talent were too shocking. Peerless talent. The dagger light was like a thunderbolt, and it arrived in front of Jiang Chun in an instant. Such a terrifying aura startled Su Yi from his enlightenment, and he instantly regained his senses. But it was too late. The dagger was as fast as lightning, and it was as powerful as a thunderbolt. It brought along a terrifying vision, and it had already arrived in front of Jiang Chun. Su Yi stood where he was. He did not panic, nor did he dodge. Red light flashed in his eyes, and Yuan Qi leaked out from his body. A circle of red Yuan Qi light enveloped him. Everything happened too fast. Su Yi subconsciously raised the black sword in his hand, and an invisible force field suddenly spread out. In an instant, the black sword in Su Yi's hand faintly emitted the sound of wind and thunder. It was filled with brilliance, and it seemed like it could explode with endless power. Chapter 8:12. Swoosh! Su Yi swung his sword, and the sword radiance was dazzling. With a sharp sound, it collided with the blade that was accompanied by the strange phenomenon. When Su Yi swung his sword, the elders and experts in Shunjian Gate were surprised. Elder Su Kuang's eyes also flashed with light. This sword, in the various mountain sects, many experts were also surprised. They seemed to have felt something, but they were also in disbelief. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, the blade radiance and the sword radiance collided with each other. The violent sound of metal exploding could be heard, and a violent gust of wind surged out from the collision point. Whoosh! In an instant, a gust of wind swept out. The blade radiance was dazzling, the sword radiance was dazzling, and the gust of wind was violent. ZY, under everyone's gaze, the strange phenomenon around the blade radiance collapsed inch by inch, and the violent energy swept out. Dang dang! A graceful figure staggered back from the violent energy, and her feet brushed against the ground as she retreated in a straight line. Chen Yinhuan let out a muffled groan, and her face turned pale. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of her red lips, and there was shock in her eyes. However, in just an instant, Chen Yinhuan gritted her teeth. At the same time, the golden light in her eyes spread out and became more intense. The aura around her became more and more powerful. She suddenly closed her eyes and then opened them again. Rumble. When Chen Yinhuan opened her eyes again, there were deafening, clanging sounds around the golden boulder. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. In an instant, heaven and earth shook, and various strange phenomena erupted. At this moment, in Chen Yinhuan's golden eyes, her pupils were like two golden suns, emitting a terrifying light. Like two golden thunderbolts, they gathered together, and like a golden pillar of light, it directly enveloped Su Yi. The void was roaring, and the golden boulder was also trembling. The golden pillar of light was shocking and extremely dazzling. It contained many mysteries, and mysterious and complex runes flowed around it. The terrifying aura was extremely terrifying. The dazzling light continued to surge towards Su Yi. Rumble. Wind and thunder rumbled in the surroundings. Light shot up into the sky, and golden light covered the sky. It was boundless and contained a power that could destroy souls and everything. It was incomparably terrifying and wanted to destroy Su Yi. Oh my God! At this moment, the power that burst out from Chen Yinhuan's eyes made everyone exclaim and tremble. Looking at the golden light from afar, they felt a piercing pain in their souls. It was not hard to imagine what kind of attack the Overlord Sex Yi Su, who was enveloped by the golden pillar of light, would face. It's the great sun's soul, extinguishing pupil. Among the 5 sects and 3 factions, some of the elders and experts were shocked. Great sun's soul, extinguishing pupil. It really is the great sun's soul, extinguishing pupil. Some experts were unable to come to the point. The sun's soul extinguishing eye is the strongest of the Qian-Yang true essence arts, but the requirements for cultivating it are too strict. Only those with innate yang pupils can cultivate it. It is said that innate yang pupils are even rarer than those with heaven-grade soul quality. Clear Sky Sect is really lucky this time. Inside Juqian Palace, Vice Palace Master Wanlan was also surprised, his eyes filled with shock. The Sun Soul Extinguishing Eye specializes in suppressing souls and is rumored to be the nemesis of soul controller masters. This time, Isu is in big trouble. Some of the sect's masters whispered. They hadn't expected Clear Sky Sect's Chun Yinhuan to be so powerful. Feeling the terrifying aura Chen Yinhuan was currently exuding, they couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat for Su Yi. In Clear Sky Sect, the elders and masters all had smiles on their faces. This was Chen Yinhuan's true trump card and strength. Once the sun soul extinguishing I was used, almost all cultivators in the same realm could be swept away. Even if he encountered a holy son or holy daughter of the holy mountain, he would be able to contend with them. Under the terrifying aura, visions surged, accompanied by flashes of lightning and roars of thunder, shocking the surrounding heavens' prides who were fighting. Sensing the true strength of Chen Yinhuan's trump card, all of them were shocked. Very strong, very strange. Enveloped in a dazzling light, Su Yi could not help but exclaim in admiration. At this moment, perhaps only Su Yi understood how terrifying the light in Chen Yinhuan's eyes was. This golden light was terrifying, like a divine light, capable of absorbing and destroying one's soul. Its vast aura and pressure resonated with the world, carrying with it the power of heaven and earth. With such terrifying might, Su Yi reckoned that not many people of the same cultivation level would be a match for Chen Yinhuan. It was enough to sweep her aside. However, Su Yi was not afraid. This golden light was capable of absorbing and destroying one's soul. But to Su Yi, this was not enough. Not to mention how powerful Su Yi's soul was, it was even more perverse than his physical strength. It was just that Su Yi did not have many opportunities to use his soul. More importantly, Su Yi's soul was the heavenly origin demon soul. At this moment, the golden light in Chen Yinhuan's golden eyes was incomparably powerful. With a momentum that could destroy everything, it suppressed Su Yi, vast and mighty, resonating with the world. However, this strange attack only affected Su Yi for a moment. In Su Yi's mind, the red soul power seemed to have been provoked, causing huge waves. The heavenly origin demon soul carried a domineering and majestic aura, directly suppressing and devouring the terrifying power. This should be your last trump card. Let's end this. Su Yi's eyes were bright red. His expression was calm as he stepped out and stretched out his hand. A palm print condensed, as dazzling as the sun, directly crossing the golden light. Then, as fast as lightning, it landed on Chen Yinhuan's shoulder. Bang! With a muffled sound, the dazzling halo on Chen Yinhuan's body shattered, and the shattered mighty force rose and fell one after another. Puff! Chen Yinhuan vomited blood. Her delicate red lips turned gray in an instant, and she spat out a mouthful of dark red blood. Her graceful body was sent flying, crashing upside down a dozen feet away. Chen Yinhuan lost. What a powerful Su! Too domineering and fierce. That's Clear Sky Sect's Great Sun Soul Extinguishing Pupil, which specializes in attacking the soul. He actually remained unmoved. The last move, Isu broke through all techniques with brute force. A pure Yuan Qi attack sent Chen Yinhuan flying. It's too terrifying. As Chen Yinhuan's delicate body was sent flying, countless eyes in the field trembled fiercely, especially the masters of the 5 sects, 3 factions, and other great forces. Each of their eyes twitched. How could they not see the strength of the Belong sect's Isu? The great sun soul, extinguishing pupil, was not damaged at all. This was too terrifying. The elders of Clear Sky sect watched as the delicate body fell and vomited blood. Their eyes, which were originally full of hope, suddenly turned into shock and astonishment. Chen Yinhuan had used all her trump cards, yet she was still defeated so miserably. Just how strong was this guy? Chapter 8:13. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you're very strong. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to win. Su Yi said to Chen Yinhuan. He didn't mean to hurt her, but Chen Yinhuan was indeed very strong. If he didn't use more force, he wouldn't have been able to defeat her. A defeat is a defeat. This time, it's because I didn't cultivate properly. But next time, it might not be the same. Chen Yinhuan pouted her lips. Her faint golden eyes glared at Su Yi as she stuffed an elixir into her mouth. After that, her graceful figure wrapped in tight clothes leaped off the golden boulder. Chen Yinhuan didn't have any intention to attack again. At this moment, she was clear about her own situation. Not to mention the injuries on her body. She couldn't fight anymore after using the great sun soul extinguishing eye once. Looking at Chun Yinhuan's back, Su Yi smiled helplessly as he swept his gaze across the surroundings. Roar! A sea of fire filled the air, covering the golden boulder. Qi Tianquan's enormous flame wolf battle armor stood tall as a huge flame wolf phantasm circled around him. He tightly gripped a trident that was several meters long in his hand. Like flowing magma, it gave off a blazing aura that filled the sky, causing the space around the trident to faintly show signs of dense. Fire God's Battle Halberd. This Qi Tianxian of the Skyblaze sect is also very strong. Qi Tianxian is so powerful. His talent is terrifying. He can actually control the Flaming Wolf battle armor and the Fire God's Battle Halberd. Qi Tianxian can sweep through anyone in the same cultivation realm. After Su Yi defeated Chun Yinhuan, the countless gazes fell on Naren Ruyu and Qi Tianxian. Looking at Qi Tianquan's current aura, many people were shocked. At this moment, Qi Tianxian had already used all of his trump cards. The huge flaming wolf battle armor emitted a monstrous aura, giving people the impression that the fire god had descended. The fire god's battle halberd in his hand had a huge origin. That's about it. You don't have any other tricks up your sleeves, right? Naren Ryu stepped into the blazing aura, her gaze still calm. Fight! Qi Tianxian attacked with all his might. The fire wolf on the fire wolf armor roared, and its huge body rushed out with an aura that resonated with the world. The halberd in his hand rumbled, and as energy poured into it, it was as if there was a volcano's majestic energy, causing the surrounding space to distort. At this moment, the entire golden boulder was trembling. The blazing aura that filled the sky was incomparably terrifying. It was as if the sun had descended from the sky, causing one's hair to stand on end. Still not enough, Naren Ruyu said coldly. She formed a seal with both of her hands. A fist seal condensed and suddenly blasted out. Roar! In front of Naren Ruyu's fist, a shadow of a strange beast shot out. Divine aura filled the sky, as if it was going to shatter the earth. Its momentum was terrifying. The strange beast's illusory figure and the former's monstrous hot aura were both extremely terrifying. They instantly cut through the air and collided like meteorites in front of countless shocked gazes. Suddenly, at the instant when the two collided, frightening energy ripples and flames swept out like a storm. A hurricane whistled and set off a monstrous force. This part of the world also rumbled. The battles on the other golden boulders in the surroundings were all affected. One of the two energies was incomparably divine, while the other was blazing hot. They covered the golden boulders as if they were blotting out the sun. Ordinary people could not see through them with the naked eye. Only the huge illusory figure of the strange beast and the fire wolf's illusory figure would roar from time to time. The golden boulders were all sealed with energy. Otherwise, they would have been blasted to smithereens long ago. In just an instant, the frightening energy had already dissipated. The two figures had already landed on the golden boulders. Naren Ryu was at ease, as if she was unharmed. Qi Tianquan's huge flaming wolf battle armor stood tall. He seemed unharmed, but the fire wolf's illusory figure on the battle armor had disappeared. Crack, crack, but very soon, the flaming wolf battle armor on Qi Tianquan's body began to crack. It shattered and disappeared inch by inch. His body gradually shrank, and he soon returned to his original appearance. At this moment, Qi Tianquan's face was pale and his hair was disheveled. He coughed up a large mouthful of blood, and his entire body went limp. He gripped his halberd tightly in his right hand and half-knelt on the ground. Go cultivate for a few more years. You're still not strong enough. Naren Ryu looked at Qi Tianxian and said, not paying him much attention. She then turned her gaze towards Su Yi, who had already finished his battle, a cold light flashing in her eyes. Li Qingwei also won, someone exclaimed. On the golden boulder, Li Qingwei's body was shrouded in a bright light. Her clothes fluttered slightly, making her look like a fairy. The aura she exuded was powerful, and she had defeated the young man from Clear Sky Sect. Rumble. It was also at this moment that a rumbling sound rang out. A strange phenomenon appeared, and golden light shone dazzlingly. In an instant, everyone's gaze was drawn towards the source of the commotion. What they saw was a young man with a ferocious aura. His entire body was shrouded in a giant blue tiger illusory figure, as if he had transformed into a giant blue tiger. Roar! The tiger's roar shook the heavens as a terrifying aura erupted. The young man seemed to have fused with the giant blue tiger. He looked as if he was about to pounce. The Beast Emperor sect is really strong, someone exclaimed. That was the Beast Emperor sect's method. The Beast Emperor sect had many methods that were related to the demonic beasts. They were incomparably powerful, and they were the most terrifying. Although that young man wasn't as famous as the Shaoxi Lord, being able to reach this round proved that he was also a peerless genius. In the Shunjian Gate, everyone looked at Mu Yao anxiously. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Facing the terrifying aura of the young man, Mu Yao's eyes emitted a golden light. Then, with her body as the center, a dazzling golden light shone brighter and more dazzling. It emitted a dazzling radiance that attracted the energy of heaven and earth. Boom! In the next instant, a giant bird illusory figure appeared around Mu Yao. It flapped its wings and soared into the sky. Gee! The bird's cry pierced through the clouds. It was as if heavenly thunder rumbled, causing the surrounding space to ripple. The golden light was so dazzling that it caused the entire area to tremble. Flap, flap, flap. When the bird spread its wings, it was as if it was alive. Its entire body shone with a golden light. As it flapped its wings, the space above the golden boulder seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Roar! Okay, LV, when the bird appeared, the young man from the Beast Emperor sect couldn't help but tremble. Oh my God, that's golden-winged great rock. That's a golden-winged great rock. In an instant, someone exclaimed as they recognized the bird. It was the legendary golden-winged great rock. Who would have thought that Mu Yao from the Shunjian Gate would actually transform into a golden-winged great rock? The entire crowd was in an uproar. The golden-winged great rock was a legendary demonic beast. It was one of the strongest demonic beasts in the demonic beasts. Goo. Chapter 814. It's rumored that she's a half-demon and is related to the great golden-winged rock race. It seems like the rumors are true. Many people from the 5 sects and 3 factions had complicated looks in their eyes. This was especially so for the experts from the Beast Emperor sect. The Beast Emperor sect was the most familiar with the greater demons of the demonic races. They were even more clear about what the great golden-winged rock race represented. Above the golden boulder, the great golden-winged rock flapped its wings and circled in the air. Its eyes were like 2 tiny suns, exuding a ferocious aura. Mu Yao stood above the golden boulder. Her orange robes fluttered in the wind as she stepped on the great golden-winged rock race. She looked like a holy maiden. The huge green tiger that had merged with the young man from the Beast Emperor sect stared at the golden-winged great rock with its ferocious eyes. The pressure radiating from the golden-winged great rock caused the young man's eyes to tremble. Roar! But very quickly, the green tiger roared. Its claws tore through space as it pounced towards the great golden-winged rock race. The great golden-winged rock swooped down as golden light shone from it. The 2 gigantic beasts clashed together as a dazzling light burst forth. Gales of energy rippled out in all directions. Rumble! The entire golden boulder was in a state of chaos. As the energy rippled out, 2 figures appeared. The green tiger around the young man from the Beast Emperor sect had already shattered. His feet scraped against the ground as he staggered backwards. He staggered to the edge of the golden boulder as his face turned deathly pale. A golden light flashed, and Mu Yao's slender figure appeared in front of the young man from the Beast Emperor sect, leaving behind afterimages. At this moment, Mu Yao's sparkling and translucent skin was suffused with golden light, causing her skin to look like golden suet jade. Her dress fluttered, her beautiful hair danced, and a tyrannical and fierce aura fluctuation erupted from her. She also revealed a special kind of beauty. Her moving face was solemn and dignified. She formed a hand seal in her hand, and a golden palm seal landed on the latter's chest. Bang! Golden light flashed as origin energy surged. The young man's eyes widened in shock, but was already too late. His body flew backwards like a kite as blood spurted from his mouth. Pooh! The young man from the Beast Emperor's sect smashed into the golden boulder as he coughed up blood. He lost. The spectators' eyes widened. The young man from the Beast Emperor's sect was definitely strong, but he was still defeated. When the elders of the Beast Emperor's sect saw the disciples of their sect being defeated, they couldn't help but feel regret in their hearts. As for the experts from the Xinjiang Gate, they were all smiles. No matter what, the Xinjiang Gate's eyes. She's so fast. The fierce beasts stepped forward. Their energy was like waves hitting the shore, fiercely attacking. It was so powerful that it made the onlookers tremble. Their souls were throbbing uneasily. The quality of the quasi-soul is very strong. It seems that Su Chan can't resist it. When the strong cultivators of the various groups sensed Gong Qianxing's strength, they couldn't help but sigh in admiration. His strength wasn't any weaker than Qi Tianxian's. Su Chen wouldn't be able to resist. Gong Qianxing's attack became extremely strong and overbearing at this moment. He wanted to defeat Su Chen in the most direct way to wash away the embarrassment of the long battle. He couldn't gain the upper hand against a rogue cultivator and even suffered a loss. This was a shame. At this moment, Gong Qianxing wanted to defeat Su Chen and show his elegance. He wanted to shock the Central State with his battle in the Sacred Martial Arts Conference. Tianxian sect is almost like this. Let's end it. The terrifying attack swept over. Su Chan raised his eyes, and his hair suddenly danced wildly. His temperament changed completely in an instant. It was a warm and gentle temperament. In an instant, he revived like a fierce god. His clear eyes were suddenly filled with lightning. Blood chi rolled around his body, and electric arcs surged. It faintly led to lightning flashes and thunder. Dark clouds quietly gathered in the void, swallowing all the light in the surroundings. The area around the golden boulder fell into darkness. This is not good. Su Chen has wind attribute spiritual chi and lightning attribute spiritual chi. Chapter 815. Su Chen was a wind attribute Yuan Qi master, but he also possessed the thunder attribute. There were very few people who possessed two special attributes at the same time. More importantly, at this moment, Jin Wanyin felt that there was a terrifying aura coming from Su Chen's body. That aura seemed to be clearly suppressing Gong Qianxing. Boom. The void trembled, the wind rose, clouds surged, and thunder exploded. Su Chen did not retreat. Instead, his right hand clenched into a fist and punched forward. In the surrounding void, lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and dark clouds rolled. This punch was like a blazing sun. Dazzling lightning bolts rushed into the sky, and thunder continued to sweep towards Gong Qianxing's attack. Rumble! This was a big showdown. Arcs of lightning and Yuan Qi surged, like gorgeous fireworks exploding, sweeping in all directions. Lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, making people who watched from afar tremble in fear. Not good. In just a moment, the elders and experts of the Heavenly Xian sect stood up in horror, and their complexion changed dramatically. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the fierce beast phantom that Gong Qianxing was sitting on was collapsing. The soul attack that was enough to make any warrior fearful could not affect Su Chen at all. Puff! In an instant, Gong Qianxing spat out blood. The confidence in his eyes had been quietly replaced by shock. At this moment, Gong Qianxing clearly felt that the former's power had suddenly soared to the point that he could not contend with it. He had been preparing his trump card, wanting to give the other party a final blow, but who knew that the other party had not used his full strength. Quasi-heaven grade soul quality, it seems that it is still lacking a little. A voice came out from Su Chen's mouth. It was incomparably domineering. His figure crossed the void, and with an unparalleled posture, he punched towards Gong Qianxing bang. An arc of lightning exploded on Gong Qianxing's chest, and his Yuan Qi light shield was shattered. He spat out blood again, and his body was blasted away. Bang! As Gong Qianxing fell, the golden boulder trembled, and he spat out blood. The arc of lightning on his body was still fluctuating. He struggled a few times, but was unable to get up. My goodness, he really hit it well. Although he had always known that Su Chen was unfathomable. He couldn't help but be shocked when he saw Su Chen's strength. Su Chen possessed wind and lightning attributes. His combat strength was too shocking. Let's decide the victor. Not far away, Jian Wuk and the extraordinary youth from Driving Heaven's Palace were about to decide a victor. Jian Wuk was already going all out. The treasured sword in his hand was filled with the sound of wind and thunder. This treasured sword was definitely at the level of a Tao artifact. Sword light gushed out, releasing an incomparably fierce aura. Swish, 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 swish. Streaks of sword radiance crisscrossed and enveloped the entire golden boulder. It was as if a net of swords had been constructed and spread out fiercely towards the former. It was as if 10,000 swords were moving at the same time. This Jian Wuk also has 1 foot in the Yuan Zhen realm 3rd level. The divine sword sex sky raising drifting cloud sword has also been cultivated to such a level. This generation of divine sword sex youngsters, there are quite a few peerless talents. Looking at Jian Wuk's attack, many experts were secretly impressed. Jian Wuk's strength was indeed not to be underestimated. I have also comprehended this sword technique. I'm going to test it out. Carat M looking at version X. Chapter R section Supra. Chapter R section Supra. The eyes of the Driving Heaven's Palace's youth shone brightly. Battle intent surged in his eyes. The treasured sword in his hand rumbled and shone brightly. Its level was not below Jian Wuk's sword. The sword radiance flashed and released an incomparably resplendent sword radiance, clashing with the former. In an instant, the golden boulder was surrounded by dancing sword radiance. The sword radiance swept across. Even from afar, one could feel the terror and sharpness. Spatial ripples spread out continuously, shaking the surroundings. Clang, clang. Sparks flew as the sword radiance clashed. It was so fast that it was dazzling. The sword radiance shattered, and the 2 figures clashed. Jian Wuk took advantage of the situation and stretched out his left hand. 2 fingers moved, and light flashed from his fingertips. The sound of wind breaking could be heard as a sharp sword radiance burst out, aiming straight for the former. The eyes of the Driving Heaven's Palace's youth darkened. His robes fluttered in the wind as he punched out with his left hand. Yuan Qi wrapped around the sword radiance as the 2 collided and shattered it. Xiao! Jian Wuk's treasured sword pierced out. Wind and thunder clashed as the sword radiance flashed like lightning. The sword radiance was dazzling and had already reached the former's forehead. Qi La! The sword radiance pierced through the latter's forehead. Many people were shocked. Jian Wuk had won. But at this moment, the body of the Driving Heaven's Palace's youth was shattered. There was no blood flowing out. Jian Wuk's expression changed drastically. He seemed to have sensed something and quickly retreated. Qi La! But it was too late. The sword radiance was like lightning as it pierced through the torture chamber. It was as fast as lightning and as powerful as thunder. Jian Wuk's pupils constricted. His movement technique was strange as he quickly retreated. Yuan Qi gathered in front of his chest, and a sword light shield appeared. Qi La! The sword radiance pierced through the sword light shield. At this moment, Jian Wuk's cultivation level was almost at the peak of the 3rd level of Yuan Zhen realm. Xiao! At this moment, Jian Wuk avoided the vital part of his chest. But the sword was like a shadow as it pierced through his shoulder. Blood splattered as Jian Wuk's expression changed drastically. He quickly retreated and escaped from the sword radiance. Bang! It was too fast. The driving Heavens Palace's youth's speed suddenly increased. His left hand had already punched out, and it landed on Jian Wuk's body like lightning. Poochie! Jian Wuk spat out blood as his body flew backwards and landed heavily on the golden boulder. Han Luoyun had been holding back. He only used his full strength now. Driving Heaven's Palace is indeed the Driving Heaven's Palace. Han Luoyun is too strong. Everyone was shocked. The strength of that young disciple from Imperial Heavenly Palace was beyond their expectations, but it was also within their expectations. After all, Han Luoyun was a disciple of the Driving Heaven's Palace. He represented the Driving Heaven's Palace to participate in the sacred martial assembly. How could he be weak? Jian Wuk stood up. His robe was stained with blood, and there were many tears on it. His shoulder was bleeding, and he spat out blood. His face was pale, and there was a hint of loneliness in his eyes. He had lost, and had no chance to enter the next round. The sword in Han Luoyun's hand was retracted. His face was pale as he stuffed an elixir into his mouth. There were also tears on his robe. It was obvious that he had not used his full strength and was at a disadvantage. This Han Luoyun hid his strength too well. In the Xinjiang Gate, the elders and experts were all disappointed. Jian Wuk was definitely very strong. His comprehension of the sword Dao had shocked even some of the experts in the gate. Although Jian Wuk was only at the peak of the second level of Yuanjin realm, his battle strength was enough to fight against opponents of a higher level. But now, he had lost to Han Luoyun from the Driving Heaven's Palace. He The flood dragon rushed. It opened its mouth to swallow the sword light. However, that billowing demonic chi ruthlessly crashed into Feng Qingnong's body. Ding ding! Feng Qingnong's body. Feng Qingnong's body. Xiao Jun staggered back as well, but after a few steps, she steadied herself and let out a muffled groan. Feng Qingnong wanted to continue fighting. When the Yuan Qi in his body circulated once more, for some unknown reason, he suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood. You've been hit by my heavenly dragon energy. If you continue to force yourself, it will destroy your foundation. If you're lucky, you'll go berserk. If you're lucky, your meridians will collapse. Shaoxi Lord looked at Feng Qingnong. His heavenly dragon energy was his trump card. Feng Qingnong's expression was solemn, and his eyes were desolate. He still had the strength to fight, but he did not doubt the Lord Shaoxi's words at all. At that moment, there was a terrifying power in his body that could not be dispelled. It was like a ferocious dragon that was entrenched in his body. Once he used his energy, this power would shatter his meridians. Beast Emperor Sek's heavenly dragon energy. He was too careless. Looking at the changes in the battlefield, the elders and experts of Three Yuan sect were sullen. Feng Qingnong couldn't fight anymore. He had no chance to enter the next round. On the contrary, the elders and experts of Beast Emperor sect smiled. Although the other disciple lost to Mu Yao from Xinjiang Gate, Shaoxi Lord didn't let them down and entered the next round. At this moment, there were only 2 people left in the arena who were still fighting fiercely. Lin Fan looked energetic. He wasn't old, probably not even 20 years old. His body was covered in mist, and his white robes fluttered. How elegant! Lin Fan's aura was strong. Step by step, the light around him was bright and dazzling, suppressing Yin Lin. Without a doubt, Lin Fan was strong. At such a young age, he had reached such a level. Many experts were shocked. I didn't expect Lin Fan from Distinct Void Sect to have such talent. The experts from the 5 sects and 3 factions were shocked. Clear Sky's sect's Chun Yanhuan wasn't even 20 years old, but his strength was terrifying. He was a genius among geniuses. But now, Lin Fan didn't seem to be inferior to Chen Yanhuan. Lin Fan was strong, too strong. He was the number one person in the younger generation of distinct void sect. He was in high spirits and looked handsome. Many girls were cheering for him, and the young men were cheering for him. On the other hand, Yin Lin was ugly. He was half human and half beast, and his face was fierce. Many people were disgusted with him. After being suppressed by Lin Fan, there were people who booed him. But in the battlefield, there were people with sharp eyes who were more and more shocked, especially the elders from the 5 sects and 3 groups. They all stared at the scene with puzzled looks on their faces. Even the elders and experts of the distinct void sect didn't have any smiles on their faces. Instead, their expressions grew more and more serious. How could they not see that although Lin Fan seemed to have the upper hand from the beginning, no matter how Lin Fan suppressed him, he couldn't suppress Yin Lin. Yin Lin's attacks were simple and direct, as if he only knew how to use brute force. But Lin Fan couldn't completely suppress him. Boom! The black scales on Yin Lin's body opened up, and a fierce aura burst out. He was being suppressed barehanded. His face turned serious, but he wasn't afraid. The black scales on his body were indestructible and were his best defense and weapon. At this moment, the battlefield had quietened down, and only Lin Fan and Yin Lin were left. This made Lin Fan more and more anxious. He didn't hold back anymore, and his cultivation base, which was close to the peak of 2nd level Yuan Jin realm, swept out. Boom! Lin Fan's aura exploded, and a bright light surrounded him, causing the space to ripple. Green cloud seal. With a deep cry, Lin Fan instantly formed a handprint in his hand. A handprint moved quickly. There was a misty airflow lingering on the handprint. It was incomparably violent as it churned. It was like a gale sweeping past, causing a woo-woo sound to resound in the surroundings. Even the space around the handprint became slightly distorted and illusory. This palm seal contained Lin Fan's full strength. A powerful force enveloped the surroundings like a storm, and the violent wind was enough to tear the space apart. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.